This is Audible.
Pink Flamingo Productions presents Obsessed with His Bride, a possessive mafia romance, Leone Crime Family Book 1. Written by BB Hamel. Performed by Chloe Ryan and Theo Sinclair. 1. Dante. In a few minutes, I was going to kill a man. The asphalt was slick with rain as I stepped out of my black SUV and into the pitch-dark night. I shut the door, making the sound echo off the old brick building's walls, bouncing around the block and out of sight. The only other sounds were the patter of rain and puddles and the soft idling of the SUV's engine. I knew Stephen was watching carefully, a loaded Glock in his lap as I stepped into the SUV's headlights and let them silhouette me from behind. "You good?" Stephen called out the window. "I'm good," I said. My eyes moved over to the abandoned school, my gaze passing over the boarded-up windows. The parking lines were beginning to fade, and the lawn around the school was beginning to get overgrown. I'd have some guys come out and cut it later in the week. I looked up as another car came down the block, heading toward the school. It was a red thing, beat up with nearly black-tinted windows, rust around the bottom, and duct tape holding on the front and back bumpers. One of the headlights was out, but the thing still managed to drive despite the fact that it seemed as though it was about to fall apart at any moment. The car pulled into the parking lot, swung around, and stopped about 20 feet away from me. I crossed my arms, my pulse beating slow. I let the rain tap against my black jacket, not caring much if I got wet. I had on jeans, black boots, a gray button-down shirt, and a nylon jacket over it all. My dark hair was pushed back, almost haphazard and lazy. I took pride in my appearance, only insofar as it intimidated my enemies. On a normal day, I wore a suit, form-fitted, expensive. But I didn't want to be visible that night, so I wore something different. The car's engine stopped, and its only headlight winked out. A figure got out of the driver's side and lingered a moment, the door still open. "Dante?" he called out. "Roger," I said. "Get your ass out here. I'm getting rained on." The door slammed shut, and Roger came walking toward me. He was an older man, probably in his 50s, but skinny and pale. His shirt hung off his bones, his khaki pants were too baggy, and there was a hole in his tennis shoes. His hair was gray, though covered with a ragged Phillies baseball cap, and he had bags under his eyes. He gave me his crooked grin and hesitated a few feet away. "Hey, boss," he said. "Hey, thanks for seeing me." He touched his hand to the base of his neck and shifted from foot to foot. I stepped out of the beams of the headlights and moved to my right, closer to the brick-fronted school, with its high-arched doorway up a long flight of concrete steps. For a second, I could almost picture the kids that used to walk up those steps every day, probably since I used to be one of them. Back when I was just a little shit, before I owned these streets. "I was wondering when I'd hear from you," I said, watching Roger closely. "You've been a little hard to get a hold of these past few days." Right. Sorry about that, boss." He smiled at me and wrung his hands in front of him. "I've been, laying low." "Laying low?" I asked in mock surprise. "Why would you need to lay low, Roger?" He said and clenched his jaw. Boss, I should just come clean, right?" I took a step closer to him, and he flinched back almost by reflex. I smiled at him, tilted my head. "Yeah, maybe you should." I hit a strip club, right? I thought it was owned by this fucking guy, Mac the Nose. Mac. Black guy, really tall, all ripped and shit. I know Mac, I said. He's Haitian. Nice guy. Yeah, right, real nice guy. But I was trying to rob him, you know. I nodded and stretched my arms, never taking my eyes off Roger. But it wasn't Mac's place, was it? I thought it was, he protested. I really did. I didn't mean... He trailed off. Who owns that strip club, Roger? I asked. I didn't know, he said, and took a step backwards. I really didn't. I don't... You're not mad at me, are you, boss? You know I'd never fuck with the Volkov without talking to you first. You know that, right? He squirmed from side to side again, and I glared at him before shaking my head. Here's the problem, I said, keeping my voice low and steady. You did fuck with them. That strip club is owned by motherfucking Vlas himself, and you ripped him off. Do you have any clue how much shit you've stirred up? I know, Roger groaned. I know, boss. That's why I've been laying low. But look, I'm here now. I want to make it right. I came with a gift, yeah? I brought you something. There better be $30,000 cash in that car, I growled at him. Do you hear me, Roger? Of course, he said. Fuck, yes, every single dollar is there and accounted for. We'll return the money and make right with Vlas, right? Absolutely, boss, we'll do it. That's why I came here. I want to make right. Good. I turned to the car and gestured. The passenger side back door opened and Gino stepped out. He was a short guy, muscular, always wore tight button-downs tucked into expensive jeans. He wore a raincoat tonight and walked over with a little swagger, his dark eyes flashing between me and Roger. Where's the money? I asked Roger. Trunk of my car, he said. It's open. I snapped at Gino, who nodded. I stared at Roger the whole time, never taking my eyes off the thief. He was about as low level as they got. I always felt bad for the guy. He was in his 50s, never a made man, never even close to making soldier in any of the crews in the city. He'd been running small-time drugs, ripping off businesses, stealing from old ladies, that sort of shit for years and years. Most of that cash, he shot it right into his arm, and when he wasn't on dope, he was drinking. The guy was a loser, the worst of the worst. But I kept him around because I felt sorry for him, and sometimes he came through with a decent score. This would have been one of those decent scores. Ripping off a strip club for 30 grand was a decent run by anyone's measure. But that dumb fucking bastard ripped off the wrong goddamned strip club, and now I had hell to pay. Gino walked to the car and opened the trunk. I couldn't see him in my peripheral vision for a moment, blocked by the open trunk, but then the sound of it slamming shut echoed. Roger shifted again, foot to foot, looking around like he was about to be ambushed. You got somewhere to be? I asked him. He blinked at me. Shit, no, not at all. Sorry, boss. Just nervous is all. I got a good present for you, though. You're gonna love it. You're gonna... Boss? Gino called out. I held up a hand to Roger, silencing him as my head turned to Gino. Bring it over, I said. Gino hesitated next to the car, squinting in at something, then shook his head and carried over a black duffel bag. I could tell it was heavy as Gino slung it over his shoulder and opened it up right next to me. It was full of cash. I reached in and picked up one of the stacks, flipped my finger through it, and dropped it back in. If there's anything missing, tell me now, I grunted. Don't make me find out the hard way. I'm going to count it, and I know how much is supposed to be there. It's all there, Roger said. Good. I nodded at Gino, but he didn't move. What's up? Boss, there's, He trailed off, frowning. There's a fucking girl in the car, I think. In the back seat. My eyes turned to Roger, and he was beaming at me. What's this? I asked him. I told you, boss. I brought a gift. I don't need some junky whore, I said, and nodded at Gino, who walked back to the car. He tossed the duffel bag inside, but he didn't follow it. Instead, he began to walk back out toward Roger. The driver's side door of the SUV opened, and Stephen got out. He held his gun in both hands, his eyes narrowed. He was a good-looking guy and pulled down plenty of girls over the years. He was my height, with muscular arms and short hair. He was smart, and we've known each other since we were little kids. He wore a navy blue sweatshirt and jeans, although he normally dressed in a dress shirt and tailored pants, similar to my own uniform. Stephen was my top lieutenant and a killer through and through, one of the most dependable and vicious men I knew. Wait, Roger said, taking a step back at the sight of my second-in-command. His eyes went wide, and I could see the old junkie thief starting to really lose it. Hold on. My present. I swear, boss, it'll change your mind. I swear to God. Fuck, Roger, I said. You know how badly you messed up, right? You understand what you did. I didn't mean... I cut him off. You didn't mean to, I mocked. But you fucking did. You know how tense things have been with the Russians these last couple of years. And then you have to go and hit one of their top capos strip joint? Do you have any clue how much shit I'm getting for that? I didn't. Oh, fuck. But wait, just take my gift, okay? His eyes were pleading now, and I could tell he was on the verge of wetting himself. I sighed and shook my head. I'm not interested. He turned, ignoring me. Ada? He shouted. Ada, come out. I was about to tell him to shut the fuck up when the back door of his car opened and a girl stepped out. She was hard to see at first. She wasn't quite in the light yet, but I caught a glimpse of thick, dark hair, milky skin, a curvy body. I hesitated, a little surprised, as she walked toward the group and came into the light. Ada was beautiful. She had thick, pink lips and wide green eyes. Her eyebrows were heavy and dark, but well manicured, and her thick, dark hair fell down around her shoulders. She wore a low-cut black tank top and tight jeans, and although she had an angry scowl on her face, she was unmistakably gorgeous. I looked from Roger to the girl and back again, trying to understand what the fuck was happening. This is Ada, Roger said, turning back to me. This is my daughter. I stared for a long moment. Then a laugh broke from my lips. I couldn't help myself. Roger, the junkie thief, the loser, the pathetic asshole, had a daughter. And not just any daughter, but a beautiful one at that. She glared even harder and crossed her arms under her full breasts, and I couldn't help but stare at them. She looked away from me, anger flashing in her eyes as Roger walked over to her. This is my daughter, he said again. She's a pretty girl, right? Listen, Dante, I know how bad I fucked up. So I want you to have her. I want her to marry you. I mean, you can marry her if you want to. I want you to have her, is all. I stood there, absolutely fucking shocked. I looked at Stephen, who seemed utterly appalled. His face was screwed up into a frown and his head was cocked to the side. Gino was trying not to laugh, though, and he had to look away. This is the most insane thing I've ever heard, I said, shaking my head in utter surprise. I've been offered some shit in the past, Roger, but never someone's own daughter. I told you this was stupid, the girl hissed. I don't even want to be here. Shut up, Roger snapped at her, then looked at me. I know you guys are involved in girls. Maybe you can use her there. I cocked my head to the side. You want me to make your own daughter a hooker? I looked at her, top to bottom, and shrugged. She's definitely beautiful enough. What do you think, Ada? You want to work for me, pay off your father's debt? I'd rather you put a bullet in both our heads, she said, meeting my gaze. I couldn't help but smile. Damn, Gino said, grinning. That's some cold shit right there. That girl has stones. Ignore her, Roger said. Shut up, Ada. Shut the hell up. He was sweating, visible even in the rain. She'll work for you. She'll be your wife. Shit, she'll clean your house. Whatever you need, Dante, you can have. Please. She's the only good thing in my life, and I'm giving her to you as penance. I nodded my head slowly and looked back at the girl. She glared right back, not looking away, and I found it oddly exciting. Most women knew me, and most of them either tried to fuck their way into my wallet or ran in the opposite direction. The smart ones ran, the stupid ones fucked me, and the rest were too afraid to make a move either way. This girl, though, she was interesting. Beautiful and the daughter of a notorious scumbag. I don't know how I didn't know about her, considering I knew everyone in the city. I stepped toward her and she didn't move away, although her father took a big step back, leaving her there alone in the light of my SUV. She stared at me, a mix of defiance and anger in her expression. I stopped a foot away from her and looked down at her body as she glared back up at me. What do you think? I asked her softly. You want to come back with me? Be my wife? Her eyes went wide. She didn't speak for a moment, but her hands dropped down. She bit her lip and tilted her head to the side. You want to marry me? I smirked. Maybe. Not yet, though. I want to ask you something first. What's that? Do you think I should spare your father? She hesitated and looked back at him. Roger's eyes went wide. Ada, he hissed. Yes, she said, though she didn't sound convinced. And if I do, you'll come with me? Live with me? Doesn't seem like the sort of thing he should be able to do. He's a piece of shit, she said. But he's still my father. I'll do what I have to do to save his life. Even if I make you work for me? She flinched. Maybe. I don't know. Honest. I like that. But don't worry, you're not a working girl. I can see that in your eyes already. So what do you want to do with me then? I smiled and let my eyes wander her body. I could think of a few things I wanted to do with her. I moved closer, leaned toward her, and she didn't pull away. I let my lips brush against her cheek as I moved them close to her ear. I'll keep you safe, I said. Boss? Stephen said before I could elaborate. I stepped back and she stared at me with surprise. We should get moving. Wrap this up. I nodded once and tilted my head. Well, Ada? Are you going to spare him? Maybe, I shrugged. She clenched her jaw again and glared back at her father. You're a piece of shit, she said, and you don't deserve me. But she turned back to me and took a step forward. I'll come. Gino, I said, take our new guest and get her in the car. Yes, boss, Gino said with a barely concealed smile. He walked over and gently took Ada by the arm, leading her away. I caught Stephen's gaze and he rolled his eyes. "You finished," he said. "I'm finished." "Good." He glanced back as Gino put Ada into the car and shut the door. "All right," Roger said. "Okay, boss. You've got the money and my daughter. Boss, I'm so sorry. Dante, I swear I'll never fuck up again. I'll never fuck up ever again." I slipped my hand under my nylon jacket and pulled the Glock from the back of my waistband in one smooth, practiced movement. I stepped up to Roger, held the gun out, and pressed the muzzle against his forehead. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "Sorry," I said, and pulled the trigger. The gunshot burst out as Roger's skull shattered and his body slumped to the blacktop at my feet. The sound of the gunshot ricocheted off the brick front of the school and bounced down along the avenue. Stephen sighed. "You're so dramatic." "Yeah, I know." I grinned at him and wiped the muzzle of my gun on Roger's shirt before slipping it back into my pants. I could hear screaming from the car, and Gino came out, cursing. He slammed the door shut. "Fuck, she's flipping out," he said. I shrugged. "Get the plastic. Let's wrap this up." He cursed and went around to the back of the car. He opened the trunk, pulled out a big roll of plastic, and carried it over. Together we wrapped Roger's body up, sealed it off with tape, then lugged it back to the car. Ada was curled up in the back seat, sobbing quietly on the floor. I helped shove Roger's corpse into the trunk and slammed the door shut. We got back in the car. Gino hesitated before climbing in, then looked at the girl on the floor. "Don't flip out again," he said. "Seriously, fuck." She said nothing, just kept crying. Stephen gave me a look, then turned the car around. We left Roger's car where it was. The police would pick it up sooner or later and dispose of it, but it wasn't like that mattered. Nobody would miss Roger, or at least nobody that mattered. Only the girl on the floor of my SUV, crying her eyes out. "Drop me off at the bakery," I grunted at Stephen. "I'll handle the body. You and Gino take Ada back to my place in Mount Airy." Stephen frowned. "You sure about that?" "Lock her up, make sure she's safe." "Boss, do it," I barked. Stephen just nodded and didn't argue. I turned around and looked at her. She was curled up on the floor, like a tiny butterfly broken and hiding. I felt bad for her, but I really had no other choice. Vlas was the son of the Russian Mafia's boss. He was a capo in his own right and a powerful guy in the city. And we had a very deep and very mutual fucking hatred. There hadn't been good between our families for some time. There hadn't been all-out war, not yet at least. The Leone family could handle a war with the Russians if that was what it came to, and I knew that my boss and fellow capos would be up for the challenge. But everyone agreed that war wasn't profitable. Things were good. We were making a lot of money, and nobody wanted to start the blood flooding the streets. Once bodies began to pile up, that was when the cops came sniffing around, and cops were very bad for business. "I couldn't let him go," I said to the girl. "You had to know that." She looked up at me, her eyes red, tears on her cheeks. "Fuck you. You didn't have to take me. Fuck you." I nodded once. "Yeah, I didn't have to, but I wanted to," I said. "You'll thank me for it." "Fuck you," she said again and looked away. I sat forward and let out a sigh as Stephen glanced at me, a frown on his face, but said nothing. Fucking Roger. Fucking Ada. I should have left her there in that parking lot. She was a liability, and I knew she would eventually cost me something more than I was willing to pay. But I didn't have the heart. Maybe it was weakness. Or maybe it was something else. But the idea of cutting her loose was worse than the alternative. She hated me at the moment, and I couldn't blame her. I'd hate me too if I had done that. But she'll come to understand why I did what I did, and maybe she'll forgive me. Doesn't matter either way. I killed her father to avoid further bloodshed. There was no getting around that one. He had to die, even if I personally would have forgiven the stupid bastard. Vlas wanted his head, and so Vlas would get the fucking head. Bastard dug his own grave. That wasn't me. We drove through the silent, rain-slicked Philly streets, and I thought about what it felt like to lose my own parents. Their blood sticky thick in my memory.
2. Ada. I woke in a strange bed in a strange room, tangled in light blue scratchy sheets. I was still in my jeans and tank top, and I kicked away the blanket as I sat up and stared at my surroundings. The walls were white and bare. There was a small closet with an old brown door in one corner. A nightstand sat next to the bed with my phone on top of it. There was a dresser with chipped gray paint and one missing drawer. A fake sunflower sat in a vase on top of it. I stared at the fake flower for a long moment as the memories of the night before came creeping back. I saw Dante smiling at me, moving closer, his lips nearly brushing mine as he whispered in my ear. I felt the thrill run down my spine as that handsome monster moved closer. He was tall, muscular, hair casually swept back, light blue eyes almost smiling, almost laughing. His full lips never quite pulled into a full grin, though, always a sideways approximation. Then I heard the gunshot again. I saw them wrapping Dad up in a sheet of plastic. I shut my eyes and tried to push it away. Slowly, I got out of bed. My sneakers were on the floor nearby. I walked over, picked them up, and grabbed my phone. I tested the doorknob, found it unlocked, and stepped out into the hall. The hardwood floor creaked as I moved, and I winced with every noise, but I tried to move as quietly as I could. I passed a bathroom on the right, another bedroom on the left, and came to a set of stairs that led down. I hesitated, listening, before creeping down them as slowly as I could. When I got to the bottom, I could see the front door. A big half-moon window sat at the top, covered with a light blue curtain. It was painted red, the knob was gold, and it looked like it was new. I took one step toward it before I heard a noise and looked over my shoulder down a short hall. Standing framed in a doorway was Dante. I wanted to scream. Instead, I squared my shoulders and looked at him with all the hate I could muster, which was a lot in the moment. I didn't love my dad. He'd barely been around when I was growing up. I was raised by my mother until I was 16. She died of cancer that year, and at the end of her life, my dad began to show up more and more. He wasn't a good person, was drinking half the time and high the rest of it, but he was there for my mother, emotionally, at least. He talked to her when she was afraid, soothed her when she was sick, and held her hand at the very end. I hated him growing up, but in that moment, I gained a little bit of respect for him. And then he moved in and took everything my mother left behind. Bit by bit, he sold it all, blew through her money, and left me with nothing but the few things I could lock away in my room and keep from him. He drifted in and out of my life for years after that. I took care of myself, got a job after school. I was lucky that the house was paid off and my aunt helped out as much as she could. I took some classes at the community college and got a job as a secretary for a law firm downtown, and things were looking okay for me. Until my father came to me in the middle of the night 3 days ago and explained that if I didn't help him, he would die. I don't know why I agreed. Maybe it was the memory of him holding my mother's hand, stroking her hair, whispering soothing words in her ear. Maybe it was the way she looked at him and cried, and the way he didn't pull back from those tears, but embraced her. So I agreed to help him. I knew it might cost me everything, but I had to try, at least for her. I knew she'd want me to. "Morning," Dante said. "Where am I?" I asked in a rush. "My house," he said, tilting his head to the side. "Do you remember last night?" I nodded once. "I remember you killing my dad." I choked on that last word and felt like an idiot, but didn't turn away. Dante looked at me for a long moment. He wore a tight black shirt and black gym shorts. His hair was pushed back, but there was a sheen of sweat on him, like he'd just been working out. I hated myself a little bit, but my eyes roamed his body, and I couldn't stop the thoughts that ran through my mind. His lips on my skin, his teeth biting my nipples, his hands gripping my ass. "Come on, I made coffee and juice." I didn't move. "I don't want anything. I just want to go home." He nodded. "I get that, and I'll let you go. But the orange juice is fresh. Just squeezed it myself." I snorted. "You squeeze your own juice?" "Sure, better that way." He gestured with his head. "Come sit with me." He walked away, disappearing into a back room. I got a glimpse of a kitchen counter and a living room beyond that, a big brown leather couch and a flat-screen TV mounted above an antique fireplace, with old-looking patterned green tiles all around it. I turned and looked at the door. It was right there, and it wasn't locked. I could open it and run. Maybe he could catch me, drag me back, kicking and screaming. Or maybe not. Maybe I could get away. I could get to the bus or call an Uber. I could stop at home, grab all my things, pull the money out from the back of my closet where I'd been hiding cash for the last few years, and move to some new city. I could start over, away from the ghost of my mother, away from the specter of my father. Instead, I turned and walked down the hall and stepped into a spacious open floor plan room. On the right was the kitchen. It was modern with dark green granite countertops, a deep bone-white farmhouse sink, and all stainless steel appliances. To the left was the living room, with that big brown couch and television. The decoration was simple, just a few thrift store paintings on the wall. I couldn't help but frown at them as my eyes swept across the room and stopped on Dante. He was drinking from a glass of orange juice. On the counter were more oranges, and a pitcher full of juice was next to them. I couldn't help but shake my head when I realized that he really had squeezed his own orange juice. "Try some," he said. "It's good." "No, thanks." "I have coffee, too." He gestured at a silver drip machine. I hesitated, then nodded. I sat down at the island on a wooden stool and put my shoes and my phone on the smooth granite top. He poured me some coffee in a mug and looked back. "Cream, sugar?" "Milk," I said. He nodded, got some whole milk from the refrigerator, and poured in a splash. He stirred it and put it down in front of me. For a second, I felt absurd. A mobster just got me some coffee and meticulously stirred in some milk like it was no big deal. I took the coffee, sipped it, and met his gaze. "We should talk," he said. "Why am I here?" He smirked and stretched his massive, muscular arms. I noticed colorful tattoos move up his skin and disappear into his shirt. I couldn't get a good glimpse at them, but I thought I saw a moon and a lion together, but I couldn't be sure. I'm pretty sure you're supposed to be my wife, right? I flinched. No, that was just my father trying to save his own life. Ah, he said, tilting his head. So you don't want to marry me? I met the monster's pretty eyes. No, because you killed my father last night. Or do you not remember? Oh no, I remember, he said softly. I delivered his body to my rival, actually. Do you know who my rival is? I shook my head and stared at my coffee. I felt sick, but took another sip anyway, hoping the caffeine would clear my head. My rival is an important member of the Russian Mafia. And do you know what your father did to piss them off? No, I whispered. Your father stole from him. Apparently, your father learned the combination to a safe Vlas keeps in the back of one of his strip clubs. How your idiot old man got that combination, I'll never know. And I don't give a fuck. He stole over 30 grand from Vlas, and that sort of shit is tantamount to declaring war. But what do you care? I asked, slamming my palm down on the counter. I glared at him as he tilted his head to one side, a little smile moving across his handsome lips. My father didn't work for you. Actually, that's where you're wrong. I'm the capo assigned to take care of Gerard Estates, which means any thief not working for the Russians is working for me. Your father paid me tribute, and in return I provided the occasional work and protection. I stared at him and felt the true horror of what he was saying wash over me. I knew my father was a bastard. I knew he was a junkie, an alcoholic, and a thief. He'd been arrested before and did some serious time a couple years back for stealing a couple cars and trying to sell them. Of course, my father tried to sell them to undercover cops. But I didn't know he was involved in organized crime. I always thought he was just some small-time loser that couldn't do anything right. Turned out he was exactly that, except he was also involved with the real criminals, the real bastards that ran the city from the shadows. You still didn't have to kill him, I said, feeling hot with rage and embarrassment. My father was a loser, a junkie loser, and there I was trying to defend him to this young, handsome capo like a moron. I hated my father for putting me in that position. I hated him even more for getting himself killed. He let out a sigh and shook his head. Yes, I did, he said, and you must realize that. If I wanted to avoid war with the Russians, I had to kill your father and return the money he stole. I'd expect no less from Vlas if one of his people ripped off one of my places. You could have just... He smiled. Gone to war? He asked. I didn't answer. I just glared down at my coffee and wondered if I could throw it in his face. Maybe, he said after a short silence. But I'm not in charge of the Leone family. In the end, that sort of decision isn't up to me, and I can tell you right now that the boss would never agree to go to war with the Russians over the life of your pathetic father. I'm sorry if that hurts, but it's the truth. I clenched my jaw and nodded. Fine. Fine? He asked softly. I met his gaze and tried to force my anger away. I did a very poor job of it. Fine, you had to kill my father. Fine, you couldn't go to war just for my dad's life. But that doesn't mean I have to thank you or like you. It doesn't mean I have to stay. You're right, he agreed. You don't have to stay. I opened my mouth to protest, then shut it again. Really? I asked. I thought you brought me here to, keep me. He laughed. Keep you how? Did you think I was going to marry you? I felt my face grow flush. "No, asshole," I snapped, although I knew I probably shouldn't push the capo of a crime family. I just didn't care. "I thought you'd force me into I don't know, some job." He snorted and turned away. He walked to the coffee machine and topped off his mug. "Truth is, we do deal in that sort of shit," he said. "We've got girls that work for us all over the city. Most of them come to it willingly, though, despite what you might think. A lot of girls from the Ukraine, for example, come over here with nothing but a pretty face and a little English. We set them up, let them work off some debt, then cut them free. Some stick around and keep working. Some disappear." He shrugged a little and sipped his coffee like what he said wasn't absolutely horrifying. "You just described human trafficking," I said. "I know." He shrugged again, and his face betrayed nothing. "Reality isn't always so clean, little Ada. At least we don't hurt our girls." "Don't call me little," I snapped. He laughed and sipped his coffee again before leaning back against the counter. "All right, little Ada. I take it from the way you're looking at me, you think I'm some kind of monster." I sat up straight and crossed my arms. "You killed my father last night." He inclined his head. "Fair enough, but I don't kill for no reason, and I don't take what isn't up for the taking or isn't offered freely. I don't force girls to fuck for me, and I don't kill men that don't deserve it. Whether you like it or not, your father deserved his fate, and I'm not going to force you to fuck for me unless you ask nicely. And even then, I think I'd rather keep you for myself than share you." I felt that flush come back to my cheeks again and hated myself for it. I hated the way he made me feel, confused and excited, angry and disgusted and full of pure, unabashed lust. The man was sex walking, with a handsome face, muscular arms, and a dangerous mystique about him that drove me wild. I wanted to get the hell out of that house, but the way he stared at me, the way he drew me in with his eyes, wouldn't let me go. "What do you want with me, then?" I asked, trying to keep my anxiety out of my voice and failing. I picked up my coffee mug to try and mask the look on my face. "Nothing," he said. "Then I can just leave," I said. "I can get up and leave." "You can, but the truth is, you have nowhere to go." I narrowed my eyes. "My apartment, I can go home." "No," he said, his voice soft, almost apologetic. "You can't." "What are you talking about? You just said—" He interrupted me before I could finish. "I told you I don't want anything from you, but it's not safe for you out there." I blinked for a moment. "My father's dead. Why wouldn't it be safe for me?" He frowned, like this actually pained him a little bit. He put his mug down on the counter and crossed his muscular arms over his ripped chest. "Until Vlas accepts my little peace offering, I have to assume that anyone related to your father is in danger. As far as I can tell, you're the only person still in his life." I flinched. He had friends. He didn't. His face didn't change as he spoke, but I could sense something beneath the words. "You were all he had, and he was willing to give you away just to save his own life." I shook my head and leaned forward onto the island. "That was my idea. He just let me." He snorted. "Same thing. Look, you can leave if you want to, but if you go back into the city right now, I'm not sure I can protect you. Vlas is a stupid, brutish man that can't think more than one step ahead, but he's also violent and impulsive and vengeful. He'll come after you just because it'll make him feel better for a few minutes." I continued to lean forward on the top of the island, as his words slowly sunk in. "He'll kill me," I whispered. "Maybe," Dante said with a gesture. "Or maybe not. I'm not going to take any chances, which is why you're here. This place is a secret, and I can keep a guy here to watch over you all the time. If you want to leave and take a chance on your own, I highly recommend you get the hell out of the city and go somewhere far from here. I bet Florida is nice right now." I could hardly understand what he was saying. My heart was racing, and I could hear the blood pulsing in my ears. "So I'm trapped," I said. "Trapped," he repeated, and rubbed a palm along his face. "Something like that." I looked up at him, anger flaring again, hot and deep. "Why are you doing this?" He looked away, like he couldn't handle my rage. "Frankly, I don't know. I think you're beautiful, and I like your anger, but you're definitely a liability. If Vlass finds out I've been keeping you from him, that'll only make him want you that much more." "Then I'm better off leaving." I sat up and stood. He didn't move, just watched me again, his eyes narrowed. "No," he said, "you're not. You're better off staying here and letting me take care of you." He stepped toward me, moving away from the counter with a surprising grace. I balled my fists and watched him. He didn't come closer, just moved into the center of the kitchen and stared at me, his eyes roaming my body. I hated him so much, but everything he said rang true. I didn't think he was lying to me, and I really did believe that he felt bad for me. Men like Dante didn't become a capo without having some kind of ruthless streak in them, and taking care of stray girls probably wasn't something he did often. Which made me so much angrier. I didn't get why he would make an exception for me. I didn't get why he'd bring me here, tell me I can leave, but also tell me I shouldn't. Like I'm supposed to choose to stay with my father's killer. "I'll take my chances," I said, and turned away. I walked to the door. I heard him follow, which made me walk faster. I almost made it, almost touched the doorknob, before he caught up with me and grabbed my wrist. I let out a little gasp as he pulled me from the door. I stumbled and ran up against his body, his warm body, slightly damp with sweat. His eyes were hard as he stared down at me, and he held my wrist with a surprising strength. "You're hurting me," I whispered. He didn't loosen his grip. "If you leave, you're going to die," he said. "I understand that you hate me. I'd hate me too if our positions were reversed. But don't throw your life away out of pride. Stay here in this house until things blow over. Then I'll let you loose." "Tell me why you're doing this, and I'll consider it." I stared into his eyes. "And don't lie to me." He looked right back. "I feel sorry for you," he said, his voice soft. "And I want to fuck you. Is that what you want to hear? I want to taste your soft, wet little cunt. I want to feel your legs wrapped around my waist." He reached up with his other hand and pressed his palm against my cheek, sliding his hand back, sending a chill down my spine until his fingers tangled in my hair. "I want to hear you whisper my name and beg for more as I fuck you rough and deep. Is that what you wanted?" I bit my lip, my heart racing. I stared at him for a long moment, unable to move, unable to look away. But a moment later, he released me. He slid his hand from my hair, dropped my wrist, and stepped back. His eyes were hard as he gestured at the door. "Go ahead and leave," he said. "You know what I want from you now. Go ahead and walk out that door. Go back to your apartment. Just remember that I warned you about this shit. I tried to help you." He turned and walked back into the kitchen, leaving me alone in the hallway again. I stayed still, heart racing. I didn't trust myself to move yet. I touched my cheek where his palm pressed against my skin, and I thought I could still feel his skin ghosting against mine. I tilted my head and bit my lip, staring down the hallway, wondering what it would be like if I really did give myself to my father's killer, if I really did let that man have me. I know I'd never walk away from it the same again. I turned to the door and touched the knob. I wanted to leave so badly, but his words rang in my ears, and the image of my father's body wrapped in plastic came back to me all over again. I shut my eyes and tried to force it away, but I couldn't. This wasn't a game. That man wasn't playing around. If he said things were dangerous for me in the city, then things were dangerous. If he was offering me protection, I had to take it. I dropped the doorknob. I turned from the door and stepped to the base of the stairs. I wanted to retch, wanted to throw up, wanted to curl up into a ball and cry my eyes out until there was nothing left inside of me. I caught a glimpse of him in the kitchen, watching as I climbed the stairs and headed back to the room I'd slept in the night before. I went inside, shut the door behind me, locked it, and crawled into bed. I pulled the covers over my head and closed my eyes and willed the world to go back to the way it was before I let my father talk me into the biggest mistake I'd ever made.
3. Dante. The Southside Bakery was empty the next morning, just after the crack of dawn. I could see Sergio in the back room finishing up the morning's bread as I went behind the counter and made myself an espresso. When I was finished, I stood there for a moment and took a long sip of the rich, strong black coffee. My eyes scanned the room. The wooden tables and counters were empty and would stay empty for another hour until the place opened at 5:30. Pastries were arranged under the glass display case, placed there by Sergio a little bit before I arrived. The smell of baked goods wafted from the back room, and I took a deep breath for a moment, letting the smell draw me back into my childhood, back into my mother's kitchen. I closed my eyes and let out my breath. Ada stayed in her room all yesterday and all that night. I had Gino watch over her, and he said she never once came out. He brought her a meal, which disappeared inside, but he didn't hear a peep. But I checked on her. A little after midnight, when I got back from the job, I opened the door and saw her body sprawled out on the bed. The shaft of light from the hallway illuminated her long, lean, pale legs, her perky ass, her tight tank top with one strap down her shoulder, her mass of thick black hair splayed out on the pillow. I shut the door quietly and let her sleep. I opened my eyes again and came out from behind the counter. I began to take down the chairs and stools from where they'd been put up the day before. I grabbed a spray bottle and a rag, then wiped down the tables, their scarred wooden tops covered in a thick layer of lacquer, and made sure they were pristine. I arranged the front display of fake plastic cupcakes, made sure they weren't falling over or dusty, and wiped down the pastry case next to the counter. I went to refill the milk and creamer just as Sergio came out from the back with a big tray of sourdough bread. He spotted me and grinned. "You know you don't have to do that," he said as I opened the top of the silver container and began to dump in the milk I took from the refrigerator underneath the espresso machine. "I don't mind," I said. "Keeps me busy." He snorted. Sergio was in his 50s, heavy in the middle, big bags under his eyes from working nights his whole life. His hands were rough and scarred, and his hair was a shock of black and gray, shoved back in a lazy wave. His eyes were dark, almost black, and he was missing a tooth on the bottom. Despite that, Sergio was sharp, one of the smartest men I knew. There was a reason he was a former capo for the Leone family and was allowed to retire in peace. Not many mobsters got to walk away from the life, but Sergio did. At least so long as he let me use his bakery for whatever nefarious purposes I came up with, usually money laundering, but sometimes I borrowed the refrigerator. Pretty sure you're plenty busy. He took the tray to the baskets stacked up on the counter behind the pastry display case and began to put the loaves inside. The white bread was already stacked high, and I could smell the pumpernickel baking next. You know how it is. Life as a capo. I screwed the top on the milk container, put the jug back in the refrigerator, then began on the creamer. You got soldiers for a reason, you know, Sergio said. He put the tray under his arm and looked at me, his other fist on his hip. You work too goddamn hard. Micromanage too much. Shit, Serge, I said. I didn't realize I was getting a lecture this morning. Sergio laughed. Guess I'm still annoyed about a couple nights ago. Oh, come on, I said. I told you that was important. I know, he frowned. Did Vlas get the message? I shrugged. Hoped you heard something. He shook his head and looked worried. He adjusted the string on his apron and looked at the floor. Haven't heard a peep, which makes me nervous. You know the Russians. They love to talk shit. But when they stop talking, then there's a problem. Don't worry. I'm sure Vlas got the message. He doesn't want war as much as I don't, just not profitable. Sergio grunted. I don't know. There are other rumors going around. Rumors about Maxim himself. I raised an eyebrow as I finished with the creamer. I put the container back in the refrigerator, screwed on the lid, and carried the milk and the creamer pitchers back to their spot next to the wooden stirrers and to-go sleeves. There are always rumors about the Russian boss. Rumors about bad health this time. Could be Vlas is looking to gain some power before the succession. I shrugged and tried not to let that worry me. He's still not dumb enough to come at me, even with good pretext. Yeah, true. I can't deny that. Sergio laughed. When I was a capo, you know how many soldiers I had? 12, I said. 12, he repeated. And you got how many? 30, I said. 30, he repeated. How the fuck did you get 30 guys to pledge their undying loyalty to you? 30 fucking made men, all sworn omerta. He shook his head. Vlas has 35, I said, absently adjusting the to-go sleeves before I turned to him. Look, I'm sorry I dropped a body on you. I really am. If I have another option next time, I'll take it. He sighed and waved me off. It's fine, kid. I get it. I'm happy to help where I can. I just sometimes forget that I'm retired. I grinned at him. Yeah, me too. Look, kid, you want my advice? You don't wait to hear from Vlas. You send word to him, show him some respect. Make sure he knows what went down was beyond your control, but you're making it right. Make it harder for him to have pretext. I clenched my jaw for a moment. The idea of showing that piece of shit respect, I know, Sergio said, shaking his head. He's a wild animal. He's sick. But you want to avoid war, right? I do, I grunted, though sometimes I wasn't so sure. I knew it wasn't profitable, and I know the Leones would be pissed. But sometimes I just wanted to roll up on Vlas with my full crew of loyal soldiers and let the chips fall as they may. Then send him a message. Sergio picked his tray back up and held it in both hands. But first, come get this door for me. I grinned, walked over, and held the kitchen door for him. I got a glimpse of a shining stainless steel kitchen with bowls in perfect rows, everything shining and bright. The smell of cooking bread blasted me in the face, and I breathed it in like a sweet elixir. Sergio slipped past me and headed over to a row of dough. I let the door shut and leaned up against the counter for a moment. I looked at the small bakery, at the tables and their gleaming metal legs, and I knew he was right. I should reach out to Vlas and make sure things were square. I was getting anxious, and I couldn't risk fucking this up, not with so much at stake. I walked to the front door and stepped outside. The bell rang and the closed sign clattered as I let it shut behind me. I got out my phone and called Steven. "Boss?" he grunted. "Get your lazy ass up." He sighed into the receiver. "I'm up." "No, you're not." "Some of us sleep," he said. "Yeah, well, you're a made man. Sleep when you're—" "What do you want, Dante?" I grinned and looked down the street. The sun was coming up over the Philly row homes, and I saw a few people starting to head to work. A guy in a suit moved past me with a backpack on, only letting his eyes drift over me for a moment. I was wearing my own suit, black jacket and black pants with my white shirt tucked in. It was my uniform, and I liked to always play the part. Besides, the jacket covered the bulge of my gun tucked into its holster at the center of my back. "Need you to send Vlas's people a message for me," I said. "Really?" He sounded a little more awake now. "Really. Reach out and check in. See if they got our little apology present. See what they say." "Huh." He was quiet for a moment. "You think that's a bad idea?" "It's just not like you," he said. "The idea of showing a little extra respect seems like it'd be foreign." "It is," I snapped. "Sergio told me to do it, so I'm doing it. Now you gonna obey your capo or what?" "Sure thing, boss," he said with a laugh. "Shoulda known that was Sergio." I sighed and rubbed my cheek. "Get your ass to the bakery in an hour," I grunted. "And wake up the others. I want double guys on the streets today. I got a bad fucking feeling." "I will," Steven said, tone serious again. "Good." I hung up, then slipped my phone back into my pocket. My eyes moved down the street, past the trees growing from their dirt patches on the edge of the sidewalk, and gazed up at the sky. It was pink and blue, a pretty little sunrise, but a bloody, bloody omen. The smell of sizzling garlic made me smile. No matter what, the smell of cooking garlic somehow made the day seem like it wasn't so bad, even if nothing seemed to go right. I moved the garlic around in the heavy cast-iron Dutch oven, then added some onions. I turned down the heat and let it soften up before adding 2 cans of whole tomatoes. I put in a dash of wine, some salt and pepper, and let that cook down for a while. I opened my refrigerator and took a bottle of beer from the back, cracked it open, and took a long drink. "Damn, boss," Gino said as he poked his head into the room from the hallway. "Shit smells good." "I know," I grunted. "You done for the day?" "Yeah, heading home." "All right. If you hang around for a little longer, you can have some." He grinned. "Nah, I appreciate that. But I got a date." I rolled my eyes. "Don't get her pregnant, you stupid fuck." "I never do," Gino laughed. "Later, boss. I'll be back early tomorrow." "Good." He slipped out of the room and I heard the front door shut behind him. I lingered in the kitchen for a moment, frowning at my living room. It was empty. The couch hadn't been touched. The TV was cold. I thought she would have come downstairs at some point, but now it was going on day 2 of her locking herself away, and I was starting to get worried. I knew she wouldn't warm up to me. I didn't expect her to. I killed her father in front of her, wrapped the guy's body in plastic, and gave him to some asshole scumbag Russian mobster. There was no reason in the world for her to ever forgive me for something like that. But she clearly understood it. I could see it in her eyes when we talked that first morning. She understood what her father was and why I did what I did, and that was all I needed from her. Maybe I wouldn't get forgiveness, but at least I could get understanding. Still, she couldn't mope around in that fucking room forever. I took the apron I was wearing to protect my clean white shirt and draped it over a stool as I walked around the island. I headed back down the hallway, past the paintings I'd gotten at thrift stores when I first bought this place a few years back, just to have some shit on the walls. My place looked haphazard, thrown together, and a little dusty, mostly because I didn't spend much time out there. Mount Airy was outside of the city, and if I was going to be a capo, I needed to be in town at all times in case shit went down. But it was good to have a second house somewhere outside of the danger zone, somewhere safe and secret. I moved up the steps, making as much noise as I could. I walked down the hall, stopped outside her door, and knocked. "Fuck off," she called. I grinned. "Open up," I said. "No." "You're done lying around in bed," I said. "Open the door." "Go away." "I'm going to open it whether you want me to or not." "I said go." I leaned my body against the door, turned the knob, and pushed it open. I was a little surprised to find it unlocked, and I stumbled a little as it swung inward. "Away." She frowned at me and tilted her head. I stood and stared at her for a moment. She was sitting on the bed wearing that same tank top, but wasn't wearing any pants. She had on a pair of black panties, her legs crossed in front of her, her phone hanging loose in her hands. She glared at me. "Get dressed," I said, grinning. "Or don't. That'd be more fun." "What do you want?" she snapped. "I'm cooking dinner. Fresh pasta sauce. Come downstairs." "No," she said. "You can bring me some if you want." "You're not lying in bed this whole time," I said. "Then let me go out for a walk." I laughed and shook my head. "You don't get it, do you? It's not safe out there." "Right. So I can leave my room and play nice with you, or what? You'll beat me up?" I stared at her and laughed again. "I'm not going to hurt you, little Ada," I said. "Come downstairs and have dinner with me." "No." She crossed her arms. "Fine." I walked back into the hallway, then glanced over my shoulder. "But I brought some clean clothes for you." She frowned at me and seemed to relax. "Really?" "Really. Come downstairs, eat dinner with me, and you can have them." "You manipulative bastard." I shrugged and walked away smiling. That'd work. I knew it would. Even if she was fine with lying around in bed for days on end, she'd have to want to shower and get dressed in something clean eventually. I had one of my guys break into her apartment and pack a couple of bags of her stuff. It was a small risk, but worth it. I headed back into the kitchen and glanced at the 2 black duffel bags lying in the corner of the living room. I stirred my sauce, tasted it, and nodded to myself. I took some sausage from the refrigerator and began to take off the casing. Just as I finished and washed my hands, I heard the steps creak, and Ada stepped into the room. She crossed her arms over her chest and glared at me. Her hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and there were bags under her eyes. But her breasts were pressed up, and her full lips pouted at me like they begged to be kissed. "Wine?" I asked. She opened her mouth like she wanted to give me some wise-ass response, then shut it again and sat down. "Please." I nodded, took a bottle from the cabinet and opened it. I poured 2 glasses, then downed my beer and put the bottle in the recycling. She picked her glass up and sipped it. "Good?" I asked. She nodded, a little surprised look on her face. "Really good. What is this?" "Friend of mine in California makes it," I said. "He sent me a few choice bottles as a gift for my birthday last year." "Oh, how old are you?" I laughed. "I'm 32, and you're 23. Did some digging on me." She frowned and sipped the wine again. "This is really good." I heated up another pan, added some oil, then began to cook the sausage as the sauce continued to simmer. "Gino said you haven't left your room yet," I said. She looked away. "Haven't felt like it." "Listen, the house is all yours. I don't live here most of the time." "But you do," she said. "I mean, live here sometimes." "You hiding from me?" "I am," she said. I turned away and moved the sausage around. I didn't want her to see my face. "You don't have to." "Where are my clothes?" she asked. I turned and nodded at the bags in the corner. "Ryan broke in. Sorry about the locks." She said nothing as she opened one of the bags and let out a groan of pleasure. She picked out a pair of shorts, a new t-shirt, and some underwear. She stared at it for a long moment, then looked at me. "Thanks," she said. I nodded. "Toothbrush and toothpaste and your other toiletries are in the other bag." He grabbed a Kindle and a laptop too, plus their chargers. She brightened. "Really? My Kindle?" "Guess you're a reader." I shuffled the food again and began to take it out of the pan as it finished, putting it on a paper towel to drain. Never got into it myself. I'm more of a movie guy. "Let me guess, you love The Godfather." I shrugged. "I'm a simple man, I guess." She laughed a little, and the sound made me smile. "Look, I'm getting changed, and that smells good. So I'll eat dinner with you, but that's it, okay? Don't get any ideas." I turned to her and tilted my head. "You mean don't think I'm going to get you drunk and fuck you tonight?" She blushed, and I knew that was exactly what she was thinking. "Just no ideas." She hurried out of the room and I heard her go back upstairs. The shower started a couple minutes later. I grinned, put on my apron, and finished cooking. By the time she came back down 20 minutes later, the sauce was nearly done, the pasta was cooked, and the sausage was finishing in the sauce. I grabbed some plates and put together 2 servings. She looked good with wet hair. Her skin glowed a little bit, and she seemed like she was smiling a little earlier. She wore a tight white t-shirt and short gray cotton shorts that just barely covered her thick, gorgeous ass. I brought the meal over to the table and gestured. "There you go," I said. "That's a real-ass Italian home-cooked meal." "I have to admit, I didn't think a guy like you would, cook." I shrugged. "Mom taught me. She did a lot of cooking back when I was a kid. It always calms me down after a shitty day." She sat down and took a bite. I watched the pleasure flit across her face. I could tell she was surprised it was good. I grinned a little, sipped my wine, and sat down, stretching out my legs. "Shitty day?" she asked. "What happened?" I waved her off. "Nothing worth talking about." "Come on. Does it have to do with that Russian guy? What's his name? Vlad?" "Vlas," I corrected. "And it might." "Then tell me. Whatever happens to him matters to me, remember?" I grunted. She had a point, although I didn't love the idea of telling her my business. Still, she seemed bright, and she was right. Whatever happened with Vlas was going to affect her life one way or the other. I sent him a message this morning, I said. Reached out about the peace offering I sent. She stiffened. Meaning my father's corpse and the money he stole. Correct. I tilted my head and didn't react to her bait. But apparently, one of his boys told my lieutenant to fuck off. Do you know what it means when someone tells my lieutenant to fuck off? She shook her head. I'm guessing it's not good. No, Ada, it's not good at all. Shit. So what's going to happen? I don't know, I admitted. But we're not taking any precautions. So I guess you're really not going to let me out to go on some long walks around the neighborhood. I stared at her for a long moment, my eyes drinking in her pretty lips and small button nose. This is a safe place, I said. But I don't know exactly how safe. It's better if you stay in and don't risk it. Yeah, I hear you. Easy to say, though. You're not the one being held prisoner. I gestured at the door. You're not a prisoner. She let out a breath and shook her head. I know. I'm not being kind. I leaned toward her. I don't expect kindness from you, I said, my voice soft. But at least be fair. Right. She clenched her jaw. Look, this is hard for me, okay? I had a life before all this. I thought I had a future. You still do, I said. But for now, you're mine to keep safe. And I'm not about to let you fall into Vlas's hands. She stabbed her pasta and nodded. Yeah, right. I'm all yours. I watched her for a moment, sipped my wine, then ate in silence for a few minutes. I could tell she was angry by the way she stabbed the pasta and sausage, like she was pretending it was my face, but I didn't push her. After a little bit, she looked up. Her expression softened a bit. Tell me something, she said. Go ahead. I'm an open book. She snorted but kept going. How many times have you done this little move? I cocked my head. What move? The whole dinner thing. Wearing the apron, sleeves rolled up, all that. I'm not going to lie, it's sexy as hell, but it's such a move. I laughed a little and watched her carefully. You think I'm sexy? I mean, you really do, I said as she blushed and sipped her wine. It's fine. I think you're absolutely gorgeous. I wasn't kidding when I told you what I want from you. I get it, she said, her cheeks crimson. But you're not answering my question. I've never once cooked for another woman, I said. She laughed. Liar. I'm not lying, I said and leaned toward her. Do you really think I'm the kind of man to cook a girl dinner? She frowned at me for a moment. You're not, are you? She whispered. I smirked and shrugged. No, I'm really not. You're the first. Why? She asked. Because I already told you. You're all mine right now. I let that sink in before sitting back. Besides, you need it. Nothing like a good home-cooked meal to help bring someone back to the world. She glared at me. I don't need your help. I know, I said, but I'm helping anyway. She took a few more bites, downed her wine, then pushed back from the table. Thanks for the clothes and the food, she said. She stood up and stared at me as I leaned back in my chair. Are you staying here tonight? I am, I confirmed. Okay, well, my door's going to be locked, so knock if you want something. I laughed softly and shook my head. Little Ada, if I wanted to come into your room without your permission, do you really think a lock's going to stop me? She bit her lip and stared at me before turning away. Good night, she said. Good night, little Ada. She walked away, and my eyes stared at her ass the whole time. I let her go without a word and sighed before looking at my plate. I was only half finished, but alone again with my thoughts. And my fucking worries. I felt the world beginning to spiral. But I wasn't lying to Ada. I've really never cooked for a woman before, and only did it now because I thought it would help her, and because I wanted to take her. She was a delicious, perfect little distraction. But with her sequestered back up in her room, I was left with dirty dishes and worries to keep me company. So I finished my wine, filled up another glass, and got busy cleaning up.
4. Ada. 3 days passed, and the only thing that kept me sane was my Kindle. Dante visited me once, only briefly, in the afternoon of the second day. I think he was checking up on me, making sure that I was staying home and staying safe. He poked his head in my room, smiled at me sprawled on the bed, and laughed. "You look like you're having fun," he said. "Too much fun," I grumbled right back. That was it. He left a few minutes later, and I didn't see him again. He left one of his young soldiers in charge of me, a guy named Gino that didn't talk much. He had a scar on his lip and bright eyes, but he was skinny and almost a little shy. He always had a gun on him, although he didn't show it off. I could see its lump in the waistband of his jeans. Always there, always tucked away and ready for him. I didn't bother trying to talk to him. I suspected Dante ordered him to keep silent anyway, just based on the way he tiptoed around me like I was some kind of caged beast. On the third day, I woke up early, took a shower, and went downstairs for coffee. Normally, Gino got the coffee set up for me and left at least half a pot in there. But that morning, I found the coffee maker was empty and the house was silent. I snuck back upstairs and hesitated outside of the room I knew Gino was sleeping in. I pressed my ear against the door and smiled when I heard him snoring. I couldn't help myself. Another chance like this wasn't going to come around anytime soon. So I crept into my room, pulled my sneakers on, dragged a hooded sweatshirt on even though it was too warm to wear it, and headed back downstairs. I was out into the early morning sunlight a few seconds later. Dante's house was perched up at the top of a hill with a long concrete staircase heading down to the sidewalk. I held on to the black railing, wondering how many times his hands had touched the same spot, as I hurried down and hit the sidewalk with a grin. It felt damn good to be out of that house. I knew it was stupid. As I walked along, taking deep breaths of the fresh air, I knew I should just turn back and go inside. Dante wasn't keeping me indoors for fun, and he wasn't forcing me into it. He wanted me to stay hidden so that I could stay safe. But that was easier said than done. Even with my laptop and my Kindle, I was bored out of my mind. It wasn't my house, and I couldn't get comfortable, not with that strange man, Gino, lurking around all the time. He watched reality TV most of the day, and when he wasn't staring at the housewives of whatever, he was talking on the phone in Italian to someone. I could never hear the other side of the conversation, but it couldn't have been interesting, just based on the way Gino would grunt into the receiver, then jabber off long, monotone phrases. I sighed and kept going, stretching my arms. His neighborhood was quiet, and I only passed a couple of older folks with white hair and windbreakers walking little white yappy dogs. Cars rolled past on the old gray street, and the yellow painted lines looked chipped and frayed, like they could use a fresh coat. The houses were all stone-fronted with peaked roofs and brick chimneys. Some were attached doubles, but most were large singles. Dante's house was one of the singles, and I guessed that was on purpose. A lot of homes had steep yards with overgrown grass and weed-covered flower beds. Although the houses seemed nice, it looked like people didn't put much stock in landscaping. I turned down a couple more streets and walked through a new neighborhood. The houses were different, all attached, all stone, but they had the same steep yards with concrete stairs leading to their porches. I kept going until I found a major cross street and looked both ways, frowning at the cars that rolled past in either direction. I knew I shouldn't go far. I didn't know Mount Airy. I could easily get lost, and Gino would probably get in trouble if they had to come and find me. But then again, I was already gone, and I might as well make the best of it. So I turned right and walked on, until I reached another major intersection and turned onto a road with gleaming steel trolley tracks running down the center. Shops lined either side of the street, and the shoulder was covered in old cobbles. There were coffee shops with handwritten signs in the windows, and green awnings in front of banks, and little antique stores with junk piled near the door. More people walked past, a group of teenage kids in baggy jeans and carrying skateboards, more groups of white-haired boomers in casual clothes, and even a few young professionals, like one woman in a pantsuit with a phone plastered to her skull. I wandered for a while. I was hungry and wanted some coffee, but I had no money, so eventually I found a bench under a large, shady oak tree and stretched my legs out to watch people go by. I used to do that sometimes with my father. He'd bring me to a bench when I was little and sit me down. We'd watch people together, and sometimes he'd try to tell me their stories, like he could understand who they were based on their clothes and the way they walked. It was a funny skill, and I liked his stories, but those afternoons were few and far between. Mostly my father was drunk and high, or missing entirely. It was always the best when he disappeared for weeks on end. I'd have him in the back of my head, a worry nagging at my skull, but life would be simpler. I wouldn't have to worry about him passing out in the living room, about him choking on his own vomit in bed. I was free to be a normal person, for a little while, at least. But he always came back, and always needed something. This time, though, he wasn't ever coming back. The thought should have made me sad. Instead, I felt a strange relief, like that yoke around my neck was finally lifted. The anchor weighing me down was cut free. I could slip off that old, heavy, used, broken skin and become something new. I couldn't help but smile a little bit at the idea. I was sad my father was dead. I was horrified that I had witnessed his death. Even more horrified that I saw his body wrapped in plastic and shoved into the trunk of an SUV. But I knew, deep down on some primal gut level, that I was better off without him, that he would have traded my life for his own in a heartbeat if given the chance. An hour or two passed. I wasn't sure. I didn't bother checking my phone. I sat on that bench and tried to act like I belonged there, like I had a future and a place to go, instead of a huge hole and a question mark where my life should have been. After a while, when my ass began to hurt from sitting on rough wooden slats, a familiar black SUV pulled up and parked in front of me. I sat there and waited patiently as the driver's side door opened and shut. Dante walked around the truck. He wore a slim suit, white shirt, and no tie. He was muscular and fit, and the clothes covered him like a glove. His shoes were black and polished, though his hair was pushed back in a tousled wave, almost like he only had enough energy to put on nice clothes, but not enough to do anything else to his appearance. There was a thin covering of hair on his face, like he forgot to shave that morning. It made him look rugged and handsome, and I absently wondered how he'd look if he let it grow out more. He sat down on the bench next to me and let out a sigh. He stretched his arms above his head, then put one arm on the back of the bench, close to my shoulders. "Nice day," he remarked. "Yeah." I shifted uncomfortably. I wanted to get up and get some blood back in my behind, but I stayed put. "Look, I just—" "You don't have to explain," he said, holding up a hand. He sighed and shut his eyes. "I get it, but poor Gino nearly shit himself." I frowned and looked away. "I didn't think about that." "He thought you got kidnapped. He was running around looking for you, called me in a panic." "Crap." I sighed and looked at him. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to freak him out." "Like I said, it's fine. I get it. You can apologize to Gino if you want." I nodded once. "I will." "Good. Gino's a good soldier, a good guy. Maybe not the brightest or the quickest, but he's vicious and loyal. I like him a lot." "I can't say I've gotten to know him very well." Dante snorted. "Did you even try?" "No," I admitted. "He feels too much like a jailer." "Yeah," Dante said. "I got that." I sat there for a moment and studied his face. He was looking out down the street with a little frown on his lips. I curled my feet up against me and hugged my knees. "Look, I don't know if I can stay cooped up in that house forever." He didn't say anything for a long moment. I felt the silence wrap around me, heavy and oppressive. I wanted to break it and try to explain again, but I knew that wouldn't be any use. He didn't seem angry at all, even though I'm sure I pulled him from the city and from something important because of my little stunt. I felt stupid and selfish, and I knew I should have just told Gino I was going out for a walk, and at least let him follow me around. Instead, I screwed things up like an asshole. "I still haven't heard back from Vlas," Dante said at last, almost as if we were picking up a conversation we'd left off just minutes before. "Your Russian counterpart, right?" "Right. I tried to reach out to him again to check on the status of my little apology, but nothing. His men told mine to fuck off, and I haven't heard a peep since." He shook his head. "It's disconcerting, Ada. Very disconcerting." "What can I do?" I asked, and immediately felt stupid for saying it. But he just looked at me. "Nothing," he said. "I appreciate the offer, though." I feel like this is somehow my fault, like my father started this war and I'm the one that should pay the price. He let out a sigh. "Truth is, I think your father was just a convenient excuse. I should have seen it sooner, but I think Vlas has been looking for any reason to war with me for months now." "What makes you think that?" I asked. "Little things. His guys slinging drugs on the edges of my territory, for example. A little bodega owner I had on the take flipped sides and began paying Vlas for protection instead. Rumors about nighttime shipments of cargo, although nobody ever specified what that cargo was. Little things, but it all should have added up." "You're a busy man," I said. "You're a capo." He nodded. "All the more reason." "How did you become a capo?" I asked, leaning toward him. I hugged my knees tighter, then let them go. "You're young, right?" He smiled and shrugged. I made soldier at 20, worked for a man named Sergio, did whatever he needed, and then some. I was loyal and I was smart. I found some new ways to make money, some digital things. Things were good for a few years, but then... He stopped and stared off into space for a second. Then, I prodded, my heart beating fast. Sergio's family was killed, he said. Not by the Russians, some small-time Chinese crew that was pushing in through our territory. They aimed for him, but missed, and got his wife and daughter instead. Nice people, very nice people, didn't deserve what they got. Sergio lost it. We went to war against the Chinese. A lot of people died. But in the end, I won a lot of goodwill with the boss for my role in that war. And when it was over and we were victorious, Sergio was allowed to retire. I was given his position and his territory. I stared at him for a long time. It was hard to picture him as this deadly, ruthless gangster, even though he murdered my father, even though I knew it was true. He was so handsome and seemed so kind, and he wore an apron when he cooked pasta. I couldn't see him winning a war, let alone fighting one. And now here you are, on the verge of another war, I said. He shrugged. This is what happens in this business. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing, little Ada, he said, looking at me. I caught myself. Right, I will. Good. He stood up and offered me his hand. Come on, come back to the house. I hesitated, then took his hand. He helped me up, opened the passenger side door for me, then shut it once I was in. He went around, got in behind the wheel, and turned the SUV around. I watched him as he drove us a few minutes back to the house, and I wondered what kind of man could win a war with murderous gangsters and walk away with more power than before. A man like Dante, as terrifying as that was. He parked out front of his house. Gino sat on the front porch and perked up as soon as I stepped foot on the sidewalk. He came to the stairs and looked down at me, relief all over his face. Hi, Gino, I said. He waved and tilted his head. You're back. I'm sorry I ran off. I went for a walk. I should have told you. I'm sorry. He nodded once and smiled. I'm just happy you're here. Dante appeared behind me, a hand on my lower back. Come on, he said, steering me up the steps. Gino went inside and we followed. Dante took me into the kitchen, sat me down, and began to make coffee. Here's the deal, he said. I can't keep you locked up in here forever, not if I can't come visit all that often, which right now, unfortunately, I can't. I said nothing, just watched him as he filled the filter up, poured in the water, and hit the power button. The machine gurgled to life and began to fill up. He turned to me and crossed his arms over his chest. How would you like to come with me into the city? Not every day, but maybe 3 times a week. At least until this all blows over. I bit my lip and tilted my head. Would that be safe? Safest you could be, he said with a grin. You'd be with me. I stood up from my stool when the coffee finished and came around the island. I took down 2 mugs, one for me and one for him. I moved close to him as I poured my coffee, but he didn't step out of the way. I turned to go back to my seat, leaving his mug on the counter, but he caught me by the wrist. He pulled me against him. I staggered, nearly spilled the coffee, but he caught it before it could run over. He gently took it from my hand and put it down next to his empty mug, as his other hand moved up along my back again, into my hair. I stared into his eyes as a little smile broke across his face. But I'll warn you, he said softly, It won't be entirely safe. There will be risks. You'd be better off hiding here in this house. Or maybe running away on my own, I whispered. He laughed and tightened his grip in my hair. Maybe, but I don't think you're going to do that. No, I don't think you want to go anywhere. I stared at him and felt the anger that had been rolling through me since he killed my father, but it was dulled somehow, no longer that white-hot flame that threatened to consume me. Instead, a big part of that anger was replaced by something else. It made my hands clammy, my back sweat. It made my heart beat faster as my eyes roamed across his muscular frame before they stopped on his lips, full and slightly parted, yet rough and masculine. I knew what it was that drove me to stay close to him, but I refused to name it, refused to make it real. What do you say? He whispered. I'll show you the ropes, introduce you to the boys. You'll like it. I nodded once, and his grip tightened in my hair again, pulling my chin up. I let out a little gasp as he moved closer, and I swear my heart almost stopped. Okay, I managed to choke out. Good girl. He lingered for a moment, a little smile on his lips before he kissed me. I stayed in that kiss, my body flooded with desire, that desire I'd been trying to ignore. I leaned closer, pressed my body tighter, felt his powerful frame, and knew I couldn't pull away. His taste was like leather and candy, both hard and soft. I pressed my hands against his hard chest and let out a soft moan as his tongue pressed against mine. I let him kiss me like that, let him take me, his fist hard in my hair, before I managed to wriggle myself free. I stared at him and took a step back. A smile came to his lips as he tilted his head to the side. Don't look surprised, he said. I told you what I wanted. I'm not going to lie to you, little Ada. He pushed himself off the counter. Be ready tomorrow morning, he said. Bright and early. We're going to help open the bakery. Wait, I said, as he moved past me toward the hallway. How early? 5 should be good, he said. Actually, make it 4:30. 4:30? I gagged. That's so early. It's a bakery. Or do you want to be here alone all day again? I could tell Gino to play cards with you. I bet that'd be fun. I glared at him and crossed my arms over my chest. I'll be ready, I said. Good. He looked at me for a moment longer before disappearing from the kitchen and down the hallway. I collapsed back against the counter and touched my fingers to my lips. The hard granite on my back felt good, but not as good as his arms, his lips, his tongue. Shit. That man's a killer. I knew it, couldn't deny it. I saw it with my own eyes. And yet, I felt myself falling deeper into something I wasn't sure I wanted to understand. He killed my father, but he also freed me from that same prison. He locked me up in this house, but he also gave me safety and protection. I hated him, and I wanted him just as much. I knew I'd be ready, bright and early.
5. Dante. I stood at the base of the steps, the front door still open, the morning still halfway night. The sun hadn't risen yet, and the world remained still. I barely slept the night before. Then again, I barely ever sleep. Ada, I called out. Little Ada, time to come down. She appeared at the top of the steps, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, her eyes puffy, a frown on her lips. She stomped down the steps in light black jeans and a button-down black top. She wore heavy brown boots and an annoyed look on her face. I loved it. She looked like she was ready for combat, except her soft body was built for better things than fighting. "This is cruel," she grunted. "This is just cruel." "Come on, you're going to love it." "No, I don't think I can love anything this early. What are we doing awake?" I laughed and turned away. I stepped out into the morning and took a deep breath, grinning at the stars. The sun would start rising soon enough, but for now, it was still the night. She came out behind me and shut the door. "You're a monster," she grumbled. "More than you even know," I said, and headed down the steps. I felt light and happy, which was strange. I expected to be afraid of this, to feel anxious for her safety. It was a bad idea to take her into the city, but I knew I couldn't expect her to wait around in my house for much longer. She ran away once. Oh, sure, she said she went for a walk just to stretch her legs, but she ran away even if she didn't realize it. She got a taste of it, and she was going to do it again sooner or later. I couldn't be sure she'd be safe the next time she decided to skip out on poor Gino, and if she was going to take stupid risks, at least I could be there with her to make sure she kept her head on her shoulders. I helped her into the car, went around to the driver's side, and pulled out. She leaned her head back on the headrest and closed her eyes. I smiled a little bit, but we had a 20-minute drive to Sergio's, and I might as well let her get a little more sleep. Sure enough, she was breathing deep by the time I pulled out front of the bakery and cut the engine. I sat there for a second, my eyes drifting down her body. I couldn't tell what it was about that girl, what it was about her that kept drawing me back. Her father was scum, the lowest of lowlifes, and I didn't regret killing the man one bit. Even if his death amounted to nothing, and Vlas used that robbery as an excuse to start a war, I still thought the world was better off without Roger in it. But even with a shit dad, she was alluring. Full pink lips, small nose, high cheekbones. She was that ideal mix of cute and sexy, and her thick hair drove me wild. I couldn't keep my fingers out of it. Her thick, perky ass made me picture doing devilish things to her body, and I knew sooner or later I was going to get what I wanted. Waiting could be fun, though. "Wake up," I said, leaning over the center console, my lips right against her ear. She stirred and smiled. She let out a little groan. "Hey, you," she said, and turned her head toward me. Her eyes fluttered open. Then she reared back and cursed. I laughed. "Thought I was someone else?" I asked. "No," she said. "No, I was dreaming." "You were having a sex dream about me, weren't you?" "No," she snapped, glaring at me, and I laughed again. "Oh my God, you really were." "Dante?" I gripped the steering wheel and shook my head. "I bet if I stripped you down right now, you'd be dripping wet. Tell me I'm wrong." She unbuckled her seatbelt. "Fuck off." "I'd love to, darling." She got out and I followed. I came around the car as she lingered on the sidewalk. "Is this the place?" she asked, gesturing at Sergio's. I nodded. Home sweet home, in a sense, at least. She snorted as I took out the single key from my wallet and unlocked the door. I held it open for her, then followed her in. She looked around and grabbed her left elbow with her right arm. "This is cute," she said. "Really cute. It's like a little hipster cafe." I laughed. "Don't let Sergio hear you say that. He was going for old world charm." "It worked." She walked to the main counter and ran her finger along the display case. "So this is your former boss's place?" "Yep," I said, going around behind the counter. I walked over to the espresso machine, got it set up, and began to make 2 coffees. "He's in back baking right now. You'll meet him soon." "Huh." She leaned on the counter next to the cash register on her elbows, like a nosy customer, watching as I made our drinks. I handed her one espresso and sipped the other, a smile on my lips. She tasted it and her eyes went wide. "This is really good," she said. "Thanks, I'm talented." I leaned back against the cabinets next to the bread baskets. I noted that sourdough was full already, along with white and pumpernickel. He was ahead of schedule. "But what are we doing here anyway?" "Like I said, we're helping open up." I put my drink down, knelt in front of a cabinet, and took out a rag and the spray bottle. I put them both in front of her. "Wipe down those tables for me, will ya?" She frowned at the rag and the bottle. "Really?" "Really. Go ahead." I nodded at the chairs stacked up on top of the tables. "Bring all those down, too." I didn't know I was working. "Gotta pay for that coffee somehow." She rolled her eyes, but smiled, put the cup down, and took the rag and spray bottle. I watched for a minute as she got to work. She took down the chairs first and got them set up, then sprayed the tables and wiped them. While she did that, I got busy refilling the milk and creamer, adjusting the pastry display, and restocking the to-go cups from a supply closet next to the tiny little bathroom in the far left corner. As she was finishing up with the tables, the door to the kitchen opened, and a fresh, wafting breeze of baking bread came drifting into the room. She perked up instantly as Sergio came into the room carrying a big tray covered in fresh rolls. He got halfway behind the counter before he noticed Ada and stopped dead in his tracks, staring at her. She turned, opened her mouth, and shut it again. "Hi," she said. Sergio looked at her, then spotted me. I was grinning like an idiot, trying not to laugh. He wiped the stupid look off his face and glared at me. "What the hell is this?" he asked. "What, you never seen a girl before?" He grunted and shook his head. "You know what I mean. Who is she?" "This is Ada," I said. "Ada, meet Sergio." My former boss looked at Ada and forced a smile on his lips. "I'm sorry if I'm being rude," he said. "I'm not used to seeing Dante with a girl." She grinned. "I find that hard to believe." "It's true," Sergio said. "Though your implication is also fairly accurate. He just never brings them here." "They're never worth bringing around," I said dismissively. "Ada's one of the good ones." "Huh," Sergio frowned at her. "That's high praise coming from him." "Thanks for helping out." "Sure. I love the place, and those smell amazing." "Help yourself to one if you want." He took the tray over to the baskets and filled one up. "Dante always does. It's why he's getting soft." "Soft, you dick." I laughed and looked down at myself. My usual uniform of expensive, bespoke suit fit my muscular body like a second skin. "I'm pretty sure I'm looking good. Right, Ada?" "You could cut back on carbs," she said. Sergio barked a laugh. "Oh yeah, I like her. Hey, Ada, help yourself to whatever you want. Don't let him guilt you into working too. You'll let him get soft if you do." "Sounds good to me." She puts the rag and the spray bottle back down on the counter next to the register and leaned against it again. "Hey, Sergio, can I ask you something?" "Of course you can, young lady." He put the tray under his right arm. I sighed and closed my eyes, rubbing my temples. "Maybe this was a bad idea," I grunted. "Was Dante always such an asshole?" she asked. "I mean, maybe asshole isn't the right word. How about preening? Self-centered?" "All of the above," Sergio said, nodding. "And yes, but he's actually better now. You should have seen him when he was young. Oh, Lord, the boy had no sense. If something was dangerous, Dante was doing it, profitable or not. That's just the kind of man he used to be."
"And what is he like now?" she asked, and I noticed the genuine curiosity in her tone. Sergio's eyes fell on me and he shrugged.
"He's a capo now," he said. "He's a leader. Puts others ahead of himself. Still a jerk, but you could do worse. Now, I've got a lot of bread to bake." "Thanks for the kind words, Serge," I said. He laughed and headed into the back again. I tilted my head and grinned at Ada as she stood up straight. "What?" she asked. "Interesting that you want to know more about me. Don't get any ideas. Hard not to, when you're fucking me with your eyes all the time." She shook her head and turned away. "You're unbelievable. You kiss me one time and you think you kissed me back, you know." I walked over and stood on the other side of the counter. I leaned forward, my mouth next to her neck. She didn't startle as I brushed her hair back. Her posture tensed for just a moment, then loosened as my lips found her skin. "I didn't know what else to do," she said. "Interesting," I murmured. "And right now, you seem to like it when I touch you." She didn't speak. I kissed her neck, her cheek, and she turned her head to look at me as our lips pressed together over her shoulder. I ran my fingers through her hair gently, not pulling, just feeling her. She purred into that kiss before she pulled away and shook her head. "Bad idea," she said. "I disagree. Sergio wouldn't mind. I could tell him to close up and go home. We can fuck in the back, then eat all the bread." She hesitated for just a second, then laughed. "Okay, that actually sounds great. The bread part, at least." "And the fucking," I crossed my arms. "Don't forget about that." "But we're not doing this. You're an asshole. You ruined my life." I laughed and shook my head. "You don't sound very convincing." "You did. You ripped it wide open." She took a step back from the counter and her eyes went wide. "I'm serious, Dante. What am I going to do now? How long am I going to be stuck in this limbo?" I spread my arms and shook my head. "I don't know," I admitted. "I'm sorry, I just don't know." "Yeah." She chewed on her lip for a second, then shook her head. "It doesn't matter, okay? We're not doing this, and that's final." I watched her pretty face for a long moment, and I could see the tension and the anxiety. I knew she wanted me as much as I wanted her. I knew her body kept telling her to give in to my advances, to let me give her all the pleasure she knew I could make her feel. But she wasn't ready for it. Not yet, at least. The wounds were too fresh. Everything was too new. I could respect that. For now, at least. She was mine, after all, and I'd have her sooner or later. "Get back to work," I said finally, picking up the rag and tossing it at her. "That display needs wiping, and the counters." "Doesn't anyone else work here?" she asked. "Staff comes in at 5:30. I checked my watch. "We have 20 minutes. Get wiping, little Ada." She glared at me, then softened. "Fine, but I'm having another coffee and a pastry when we're done." "Works for me." I picked up my espresso and sipped it, savoring the frothed milk and the rich coffee. "I have some meetings here this morning, so you can hang around. After that, I'm taking you back to my house. I'm sure Gino misses you already." She shrugged and turned toward the display case. "Works for me." I watched her spray it down, her lean, tight body moving in quick and precise lines, before turning back to the counter and getting to work.
6. Ada. Every morning for a week, he brought me to the bakery and put me to work. At first, I was exhausted all the time, but I quickly realized that if I just went to bed earlier, I'd get almost enough sleep. By the 4th day, I was starting to get the hang of things. I hated to admit it, but I looked forward to those hours between 4:30 and 8 in the morning. He'd show up, call me downstairs, and we'd drive in together. We'd talk about nothing, TV shows and movies we liked, and I quickly realized that we shared really similar taste in things. That surprised me because he didn't seem like the kind of guy that liked that sort of stuff. "How do you have time to watch TV?" I asked him on the morning of the third day. He grunted and shrugged. "I don't sleep much. I watch a lot of it in bed." "Huh," I frowned. "You always look well rested." "Guess that's my superpower. I look well rested, even when I'm not." I smiled a little and looked out the window. "I think I'd rather have the opposite power," I said, and he just laughed. I got to know Sergio a little bit during that time, though he kept to himself for the most part. The man slaved away in that kitchen all day and all night and lived in that bakery, as far as I could tell. It was working for him, though, because as soon as the doors opened, people flooded in, and he always sold out everything he made. He could never bake it fast enough for the customers that streamed in. During a couple of those mornings, I sat with Gino in a corner and sipped an espresso while people came in to speak with Dante. I thought they were all gangsters at first, until an older woman came through the door and approached his table. He stood and helped her sit very respectfully. "What's he doing?" I asked Gino. "Talking to some grandma?" he grunted. "No, I thought he was taking meetings." Gino frowned. "Yeah, that's what he's doing." "But I thought—" I trailed off. Gino smiled a little. It was lopsided because of the scar on his lip, and he didn't smile often. "Oh, I get you. No, he's meeting with regular people. That lady lives a few doors down and comes to see him like once a week. She never asks for anything. I think she just likes to talk. And he can't help himself. Always indulges the old bat." "Wait, people ask for things?" He shrugged. "Sure, that's what he's doing. People in the neighborhood come and ask him for things. Some of them are already paying for his services, so they don't need to do anything else. They're already associates. Some of them are just normal folks, and for them he'll do one favor for free, but after that he'll start asking for things in return." I couldn't help but laugh. Like The Godfather. One day he might ask for a favor. Gino shook his head. "Nah, not like that. If they're not useful, he won't do shit for them. He's not a moron." I leaned back and watched as Dante smiled at the old woman and let her take his hand and hold it between her own tanned, wrinkled fingers. She wore a navy blue sweater over gray pants and had a brown cane leaned up against the table. Her shock of curly white hair stood on the top of her head like a mushroom. Dante listened to her speak, nodded, spoke back, and eventually escorted her back out the door. He sat down, and a man wearing a business suit approached, sat, and began to speak. It went on like that. He'd pick me up in the morning, we'd open the bakery together, and once the actual staff showed up, normally a woman named Maureen that wore crimson eyeshadow, had old tattoos on her arms, and dressed like a biker lady, he'd sit at a table and take meetings while I drank coffee and watched. I learned a lot about him in those days, and I had to admit to myself, it was nice. I was starting to like being around my father's killer, and that scared me more than anything. The morning rush came in like usual as I leaned back in the booth and sipped the coffee Sergio made me before the old man disappeared back into the kitchen. He always made a point of coming out and chatting with me, and I think he liked having a young woman around for once. Gino paged through the Philadelphia Inquirer, glancing at the headlines before flipping through it. "You read that thing?" I asked him. He glanced up. "Just because I'm a thug, I can't read the news?" I laughed. "No, that's not what I meant. It's just you're going too fast." He grinned. "I'm a thug. I just read the headlines." I smiled back and sipped my coffee, and couldn't help but feel a chill at the thought of how comfortable things were beginning to feel. Dante sat back at his table, eating a muffin and staring at the window. He hadn't gotten many petitions, and I could tell he was getting a little bored. He checked his watch, this silver gleaming thing with diamonds studded in at each hour, the most ostentatious thing he ever wore, although I knew for a fact that any one of his suits probably cost as much as my entire wardrobe. They were subtle about their expense, whereas his watch was all about flash. He put the muffin down, blueberry crumbs on the plate and the table, and stood up. He nodded at Gino. "Enough for today," he said. I stood and stretched my legs. "Slow?" I asked. He shrugged. "Who knows?" He walked over and looked down at me, a little smile on his lips. "You getting interested in my business?" I shook my head. "You drag me here every day. I guess I was bound to get curious." He snorted. "Please. I see you staring, watching. I know what you're doing." "Yeah, what am I doing?" He tapped my forehead and leaned close. "You're thinking." I swatted his hand away, and he laughed, standing back up. There were a few customers, and I noticed an older woman with blonde hair cut short to her ears was staring at us with a disapproving look. I ignored her and turned toward the door. "Come on," I said. "Don't be a dick. Drive me home." "What's the rush?" he asked. "Gino's not done with his paper." "Gino can't read," I said. "I can read," he protested. "I just don't." "Don't let her get under your skin, kid," Dante said, and nudged Gino as the younger soldier tried to stand. "Relax. Stay here and finish up. I'll take her home." "Boss, it's fine," Dante said. "Relax. Stay here. I'll come pick you up when I'm done. Go tell Sergio I left and ask him for something to eat." Gino nodded and frowned. "I hate asking Sergio for food. He always makes me do dishes." "Then do the dishes and don't complain." Dante grinned and turned away. He walked past me and grabbed my arm, dragging me along. "Come on, little Ada." "Don't be a dick," I muttered. But I let him lead me out through the doors and into the morning sunshine. It was the sort of morning where birds were in the trees chirping at the sky, and people seemed to be walking with a smile on their faces. It was a Disney kind of morning, and although he pulled me along by the arm like a child, I felt a thrill at being touched by him. I knew I was going down a dark path. I knew I was tumbling head over heels into something I should have been running from. But the way his hands touched my body, the way he smirked at me, the way he acted like he owned any room he walked into, made my heart flutter, my body sing out with need. I couldn't resist it, even if I remembered my father wrapped in plastic that night, the gunshot ringing out and echoing off an abandoned, empty school. I could still see Dante's face from that night, stern, but empty. "Get in," he grunted, opening the SUV's door. I climbed into the passenger side and he slammed it shut before heading around and getting behind the wheel. "Why are you in such a rush?" He shook his head. "I'm not." He started the car and checked for traffic, then pulled out. "Tell that to the way you just dragged me down the street." He laughed. "Sometimes you walk too slow. Anyone ever tell you that before?" We came to an intersection, then turned, heading along the usual route. I shook my head. "Nope, nobody's been that much of a dick." He grunted in response, a little smile on his lips. "You're with the wrong man if you're looking for pretty lies." "I think I'd rather have pretty truth." I hesitated before running my hands down the leather seat. "And I'm not with you." He glanced at me, head tilted. "You sure about that?" he asked, and I stared back into his eyes. A second later, at the intersection just ahead, 2 black trucks pulled up and came to a screaming, screeching stop. Men were sitting in the beds of the truck, 2 in each, with more men inside the cabs. I stared at them, my jaw dropping, as Dante slammed on his brakes to avoid smashing into them. The SUV came to a screaming halt, and my body lurched forward against the strained seatbelt. For a moment, nothing happened. The air hung heavy and silent, and all I could hear was my heart and Dante's steady breathing. I watched him as his face dropped, a sudden stillness coming over his body. Then the men in the truck beds moved. They raised weapons, rifles, some kind of machine guns. I didn't know what they were, but I knew we were dead. We were both dead. They were 10 feet away, and there were 4 of them. I saw grim faces. One of them was in sunglasses. The other 3 had shaved heads. One big, crooked nose, one scar along a forehead. One had tattoos on his cheeks and throat. They were all pale and wore simple jeans and heavy denim jackets. "Down," Dante shouted. He unbuckled his seatbelt and grabbed me by the back of my neck. He unbuckled my seatbelt next and shoved me forward in one swift motion, his body diving across the center console to shove me down onto the floor, covering me with his massive arms and chest as the guns opened fire. It was like fireworks going off just above our heads, booming explosion after booming explosion, intense and unreal, shattering the air and tearing through the car. I felt glass shatter, and I heard Dante grunt. I didn't know if he was shot or cut or what was happening. All I could do was cover my head, my eyes squeezed shut. I could barely breathe, my body scrunched down so tight against the floor. But Dante didn't move. And just as abruptly as it began, the gunshots stopped, and silence came back into the world, pierced through with a ringing in my ears. "Dante?" I said, pushing up against him. "Dante!" He grunted and frowned at me. He was alive, but he was bleeding. The windshield had shattered from multiple gunshots. "You're hurt," I said, but I couldn't hear myself. It was like talking underwater, except I was gasping for air, and my body felt sluggish and broken. He shook his head, then touched his side. His shirt was soaked with blood, his jacket ripped clear through. He grunted and pulled a shard of glass out. "You need help," I said, head dizzy. "Stay down," he said, staring in my eyes. "Do you hear me? Don't fucking move." I nodded, my mouth hanging open, and he sat up. I stared as he pulled a gun from his back. It had been tucked into a holster pushed into his belt. I didn't know how I never noticed it before, but as soon as it was in his hand, it was like the gun had never left him. He leaned against the door as I moved my head up to look out the windshield. 2 of the men in the right truck were still in the back. Their guns were smoking and held up in the air. One was saying something and the other just shook his head, squinting at their car. One man from the right truck was coming toward us, his gun held out, angled toward the driver's side. Dante was staying low and still, but I saw his hand on the door handle. "Dante," I groaned, trying to whisper. He didn't look at me. The other man from the right truck was coming around my side, a few feet behind his partner. He was frowning and said something in a language I didn't understand. My ears were still ringing, screaming at me, and I wanted to get away. I wanted to crawl out from my little spot wedged down at the foot of the seat, but I didn't move. Dante told me to stay still, and I did my best to breathe as little as possible. When the first man got closer to Dante's side, he threw the door open as hard as he could. It slammed into the guy with a dull thud. He staggered back as Dante crouched and came around the open door, popping off 3 shots. The man staggered back, blood spraying up from his chest. The man on my side shouted and backpedaled. The men in the truck lowered their guns, but too slow. Dante fired 2 more shots off, one missing, the other catching the man on my side in the chest. He coughed and turned toward the trucks, but only made it a step before falling. More gunshots tore up the air. Dante dove back into the car, head down, arms covering his head. The man in the truck kept firing for what felt like forever, and I realized I was screaming when they finally stopped. Dante looked at me. "Don't move," he said, and lifted his head up. Nothing happened. He cursed and put his gun up, firing off a few shots. I heard tires scream, rubber burning on asphalt. Dante fired off more shots, but I could barely hear them. All I saw was his eyes and his blood dripping down his side. Then he stopped shooting and slumped back against the seat. He stayed like that for a long moment, breathing hard. He cursed and leaned toward me, dragging me up from the floor and onto the seat. "Are you hurt?" he asked, and I had to read his lips to understand. I shook my head. I touched my body, my chest, my hips, my legs. I didn't find any blood, didn't hurt anywhere. "I'm fine," I said. He nodded, his eyes hard. "Get out," he said. I looked out the windshield. The trucks were gone, leaving the intersection entirely clear. There were no people out on the block, no other cars coming near. Dante staggered out of the car, pulling out his cell phone as he went. I heard him barking something at it as he came around my side and helped me out. I stared at him as his big arms pulled me down and supported my weight. His bloody side pressed against mine as I leaned against him. On some vague level, I knew I should have been the one helping him, not the other way around. But his strong arms pulled me from the car, and we both staggered away from it. I stared in horror at what was left of the SUV. It was riddled with bullet holes, some of them still smoking. The glass was splintered and shattered in multiple places, and the engine was smoking. One side mirror was broken off and hanging by a wire, like its guts had been ripped open and splayed out. "Gotta keep moving," Dante grunted. "Gino's on his way." I nodded and realized my hearing was coming back. My ears were still ringing, but at least I could understand what he was saying. "What happened?" I asked him. "You're hurt. Dante, you're hurt." "Keep moving," he barked, dragging me along. He pulled me onto the sidewalk, his hand pressed against his side, a grimace on his lips. I stumbled over an uneven concrete sidewalk block, and he growled as he nearly toppled over. "Dante," I gasped, wanting to do something. He only grunted, and his grip on my arm tightened. He pulled me faster, stumbling along, his breath coming in ragged groans. He looked pale and angry, rage in his eyes so hot I could almost feel it burning my skin. Another SUV came peeling around the corner. It stopped next to us and the door opened. Gino sat in the back and came out to help me get Dante inside. I piled in next to them and looked up front to find Steven behind the wheel. "How bad?" he asked. "Back to my house," Dante growled. "He needs a doctor," I said. "The fucking Russians," Dante said. "They tried to fucking hit me." "How bad?" Steven asked again. "My house," Dante said. Steven nodded and began to drive. I stared at them, eyes wide. Gino gingerly checked on Dante's wound and nodded, before taking off his shirt and using it to press against the wound. Dante gave me a flat look, then reached out and touched my cheek. "They won't survive this," he grunted and pulled his palm away. I touched my cheek where his hand had been, and my fingers came back bloody.
7. Dante. I stared ahead at the blank television as Dr. Chen's needle slid into my skin. "Just hold tight," he said, his voice soft in my ear. I grunted in response and gripped the cut crystal glass of whiskey I held in my left hand. It wasn't my first time getting stitches, and aside from the numbing agent the doctor injected directly into the wound, it wasn't so bad. I grimaced as the skin was pulled, but Dr. Chen was skilled and patient. I lifted a glass of whiskey to my lips and took a long sip. "You okay?" he asked. "Fine," I grunted. He nodded and finished his stitch. He leaned back and looked at his work for a moment. "Not bad," he said. "I should give you some antibiotics just in case." "Fine," I said. "Dante." I met the doctor's gaze. He was older, in his mid-50s, with black hair turning gray in streaks. His dark brown eyes met mine, and he didn't flinch away. His tan skin nearly leathered from long days spent fishing when he wasn't in the office. He wore a short-sleeved camp shirt with bomber planes on it, khaki shorts and sandals. I was pretty sure he was out on his boat when Stephen called him in. "Not a word, Doc," I grunted. "You're doing it again." He frowned at me. "We talked about this." "It's part of the job." "I can't keep coming here if you're going to do this." "I understand, Doc." I tilted my head toward him. "I appreciate your time." "Dante," he said with a sigh. I'd known Dr. Chen since my war with the Chinese gang, back before I'd become a capo. I caught him treating some wounded Chinese soldiers in the back of a gambling den, and I decided to spare his life, though not the men he was treating. After that, he decided that he might as well work for the winning team, and we'd been close ever since. Normally, I wouldn't bring him to this house, but he was the only man I knew that could come on a moment's notice and take care of a serious wound. I didn't trust him, not entirely, but he liked money and he liked boats, so we paid for his docking fees every year and gave him as much cash as we could afford. That kept him loyal enough. "You don't get to get dragged into anything, Doc," I said. "If you want to leave, then leave." He stood and shook his head. "I'll treat you as needed, and your men, of course. I'm just warning you, you're not going to be young forever." I grunted and nodded at him. "I appreciate the advice, Doc." He nodded at my wound. "That'll be tender for a bit. Be careful, don't rip the stitches. When you're healed, give me a call and I can take them out." "I'll do it myself," I said. He sighed and shrugged. "Fine. Stephen has your fee. I'll write a script for the antibiotics. Take care of yourself, Dante." Dr. Chen walked off and Stephen met him in the kitchen. I watched as my lieutenant shoved a fat wad of cash into the older man's hands, then had Gina escort him back out. My eyes moved across the room and fell on Ada. She sat at the kitchen table, staring at the wall, not moving a muscle. A streak of my blood was still on her cheek. I wanted to get up and comfort her, but I was too exhausted from the fight and the blood loss. Stephen walked over a moment later and sat down in a leather armchair next to the couch with a grunt, and watched me for a moment. I lifted my whiskey glass to my lips and took a long sip. "Shouldn't have brought Dr. Chen here," Stephen said. "I agree, but it was necessary." I shook my head. "He won't talk. Russians won't pay him like we do." "Probably right." Stephen crossed his arms. "So what happened?" I winced and sipped my drink again before gingerly flexing my body. The stitches pulled, but they didn't hurt. At least not yet. I knew they would soon enough, but that wouldn't matter. I was too angry to care about that. Vlas took his shot. He fucking missed. Stephen nodded. In broad daylight, and ended up with 2 of his own dead in the street. Told you, he missed. Why were you alone? I shook my head. Left Gino behind to finish his breakfast. Dante! Ada was with me. I wasn't alone. What the fuck were you thinking? I looked away from him and shook my head. It's fine. It's not fine. The only reason you're alive is because you spent a fucking fortune on that goddamn car. And it worked. I grinned at him. Armor plating. Cost even more than a fortune in gas, but goddamn, it actually worked. I wasn't sure it would. Stephen shook his head and leaned back in the chair. He closed his eyes for a moment and let out a breath. So, he said, not looking at me, another war. I nodded once. Another war. Are you up for it? I leaned forward. What the fuck are you suggesting? I growled. He opened his eyes and looked tired. I'm suggesting that it was only a few years ago that we fought the last war, and that took a lot out of us. We're stronger now than we were before, but the guys all remember what things were like back then. It'll be even worse now. I couldn't give a fuck, I said, my voice low and hard. He came at me, he'll pay for it. Stephen nodded but looked troubled. You're right, he will. I grunted and leaned back. I took another sip and winced. I was starting to get some feeling back in my side. What's wrong? I asked. It's just, do you really think Maxim would let Vlas do something like that? Stephen asked. The old men have been bickering for years, but neither of them have approved of straight-up trying to knock off a rival. I grunted and shook my head. I don't know what that Russian shit wants, I said. Maybe you should think about that. Stephen met my eye. He was right, and I knew it, but I was too angry to go down that path. If Vlas came after me without the approval of his boss, there was going to be hell to pay all across the board. But that didn't matter, not yet at least. I leaned forward and looked over at Ada. She was staring into space still and had barely moved since we got back to the house. I shifted my weight and grunted as a fresh stab of pain sliced through my side. Stephen leaned forward and shook his head. Stay there. I'll bring her over. I looked at him, then nodded and leaned back. Stephen got up and walked over to Ada. He said something to her, then helped her to her feet and walked her over. She moved on autopilot, almost like a robot, and he guided her down into the chair he'd just left. He nodded at me and walked off, disappearing through the front hallway. I heard his footsteps echo on the stone, and I heard him speak softly with Gino out in the front foyer. My eyes drifted over Ada. She wore a navy blue button-down shirt that showed just a hint of cleavage. It was spattered with bits of my blood. Her hair was a mess, half of it still up in a bun, the other half fallen down around her shoulders and back. I leaned toward her. Hey, I said. She met my eyes. My ears are still ringing, she said. I nodded and sighed. You'll get used to it. Will it go away? Probably, I said. But it might not. Is my hearing damaged forever now? I just shrugged. We should talk. What about? She frowned at me. How are you feeling? I feel fine. I stared at her for a long moment. Ada, you know what happened back there, right? Some men tried to kill you. Yes, they did, I said, my voice soft. They tried to kill you, too. But they didn't. You saved me. She frowned and cocked her head. You killed 2 of them. I did, I agreed. Left them in the street. Couldn't do anything for them. Would you have? No, I said. I would have left them to rot. I thought so. Her voice sounded far away, and she didn't move a muscle. It was like she was a robot. I leaned forward again and forced myself to my feet. I clenched my jaw as a fresh wave of pain hit me. She frowned and stared at me, her head tilted, concern in her expression. I moved over toward her and leaned forward, one hand supporting my weight on the arm of the chair, looming above her pretty face. She didn't move. I took her chin with my other hand and tilted her face up toward me. I stared into her eyes, then licked my fingers. I used them to wipe the blood off her skin. It came off in small dabs and streaks. I wiped my fingers on my pants, licked them again, and tasted the copper and iron of my blood. I wiped her face until it was clean again. She stared into my eyes the whole time and didn't move a muscle. My heart was racing. Fuck, being close to her drove me wild. I didn't know what that feeling was, where it came from, but it suffused my body with a deep, longing glow. I killed her father, I murdered him in front of her, and yet I wanted to make her my own. I wanted to take her dead father up on his offer and make her my bride. I knew it was insane, but in the moment, I needed it. Are you mine, Ada? I whispered. She bit her lip. I don't know. You're going to be. I moved closer, my hand sliding back along her cheek, then grasping hard in her hair. I pulled it, made her gasp, her eyes widening and her body loosening. Maybe I woke her up. I couldn't tell, but I leaned closer and pressed my lips to her ear. You're going to be mine, little Ada. Your father gave you to me as a gift, said you could be my bride, and I'm taking him up on it. She pressed her hands against my chest. For just a moment I thought she might kiss me. Instead, she pushed me back. I released her hair and straightened. I winced again as pain flashed in my stitched side. She stared at me, mouth hanging open, breathing hard. What the hell are you talking about? She said. You heard me, I growled. You think this is a game? You were almost killed because of me, and I won't let that happen again. Anger ripped through me as I remembered throwing her down onto the floor of the car and covering her body with my own. My only thought in that moment was I had to save her. I had to keep her safe. I threw my glass of whiskey against the fireplace. It shattered against the stone and the brown liquid splashed against the back. I limped over to it and stared down at the mess I'd made. That doesn't mean I'm going to marry you, she said. I turned and stared as she stood up. Her chest was heaving up and down as she took deep breaths. Her face was animated at least, and she reached back to undo her hair, letting the rest of it fall down around her back. I don't give a damn what you want, I said. You're in this now, girl, and if you want to survive it, you'd better give yourself to me. She glared at me for a full 5 seconds. Silence hung between us. My body ached, and I didn't know why I was pushing her so hard. Maybe it was my anger, or maybe it was just my raging desire for her, my impatience to taste her, have her, control her, make her all mine. No, she said. You don't get to do whatever you want with me. I laughed. I couldn't help myself. I laughed and stared at her beautiful face as it twisted in a new mask of rage. I knew that look. I saw it on her the day after her father died by my gun. I liked that look on her, and I wanted to see more of it. I wanted to push her, piss her off, get her so angry that the only way she could bring herself back down was to ride my cock rough and fast. "I think I do," I said. "I saved your life. You'd be dead without me." "I'd be back home without you," she spat. "I'm only here because of you." "You're here because your piece of shit father. I know you don't get that yet, but I'm protecting you. I'm saving your life. Vlas would have hunted you down by now and cut your fucking throat just to make himself feel better. Get it through your head, Ada. Your life is mine, and now I want the rest of you." I turned to her, body tense, muscles tight. She gaped at me, lips hanging open. I could see her pretty tongue, and I wanted it in my mouth, or maybe rolling around the tip of my cock. "Go to hell," she said, and turned away. She took a step toward the kitchen, but I moved fast. I walked up to her and grabbed her arm. I didn't care that it hurt, that it tugged at the stitches. I grabbed her hard and pulled her against me. She turned, eyes wide, as I grabbed her hair rough and pressed my lips against hers. She moaned into that kiss. "Fuck," she moaned, and I could taste that moan on my lips. My tongue slid against hers as I lingered there, gripping her hair, pulling her hair. She was mine, all mine, gorgeous little fucking Ada. I bit her lower lip, and she took a sharp breath, her eyes fierce as I released her. She took a step back, breathing hard. "Asshole," she whispered, and turned away again. I let her go that time. She stormed out and disappeared down the back hallway. I let out a grunt as my exhaustion hit me again. I lowered myself onto the couch and checked to make sure my stitches hadn't ripped. Once I was satisfied that nothing was bleeding, I called for Stephen. He came into the room and lingered behind the couch. I didn't turn to look at him. "Call up my soldiers," I ordered, "and send a message to Don Leone. We're going to war." He was silent for only a moment. "Yes, sir," he said. I heard his footsteps retreat back out of the room as I stared at the stone fireplace and the broken glass glistening in the afternoon sunlight slanting in through the window.
8. Ada. For 3 days, I woke up alone in a strange bed with sweat pouring down my skin. I kicked off the sheets and stared at the ceiling, going over the same dream in my mind, letting it loop through my brain over and over again. In that dream, Dante stood over me, a wicked smile on his face. He offered me a hand, but as soon as I reached for him, he got further and further away. A pool of blood tried to suck me down into a crack in the pavement. He reached for me, but he kept missing, and soon the world was flooded with black. Then I'd wake up. 3 nights, 3 mornings, the same dream each time. On that 3rd morning, I got out of bed and took a shower right away. I let the water drip off my skin. I watched it slide down the off-white drain. The shower head was old, dripped all over, and had terrible water pressure, but it was better than nothing. I let it rinse over me, cleaning the sweat from my body, clearing the dream from my mind. By the time I got out, the room was covered in steam. I wrapped a towel around myself, an old, thin, scratchy light blue thing with bleach stains, and stepped out into the hall. And stopped in my tracks. Dante stood near the stairs like he had just come to the top. He tilted his head to one side, a small smile breaking across his lips as his eyes took me in. I hadn't seen him since that afternoon. Gino stayed with me day and night, only leaving to get food and whatever else I asked for, but he was never gone. I found Gino in the kitchen most mornings, coffee already made, several guns spread out on the table. He'd clean them meticulously, oiling their mechanisms until they shimmered in the incandescent bulbs. "I was hoping I'd run into you," Dante said. "Where have you been?" I asked. The question came out angrier than I'd intended, but I couldn't help it. Anger flared through me, anger at being left behind, anger at being locked up. He shrugged and leaned against the wall. "Been preparing for war, little Ada." "So what? You should have come seen me sooner." I took a step closer, my heart racing. I wanted to tell him how worried I've been, how I kept dreaming about him dying and letting me fall into some black abyss. But I kept my mouth shut. "Interesting. Didn't know you wanted to see me." He took a step closer and I took a step back. I was suddenly very aware that I was in nothing but a towel. "Come here." "No." I grabbed the edge of my towel with my right hand. "Just let me through." He kept coming. I backed up until I ran into the wall. He stopped a couple feet away from me, looming tall. He wore his usual clothes, tight white shirt, perfectly fitted bespoke pants, though the jacket was left downstairs, and his sleeves were rolled to the elbow. He cocked his head and ran a hand through his hair. "You want me to come see you, then you're telling me to get away. You're sending mixed messages, Ada." I glared at him. "I'm a little vulnerable right now." "I know." He reached out and tilted my chin toward him. I clenched my jaw but didn't move. "I like it." "I bet you do," I said, staring into his eyes. He held my gaze for a long moment, not speaking. I could still remember the look on his face that day after we got back as the doctor stitched him up. There was no pain, not anguish, only pure rage. Rage so hot and deep that I thought he might start breaking things. He scared me, and I couldn't pretend like I wasn't worried with him standing so near, his body looming over mine. "I've been avoiding you," he said, his voice low and soft. "I'll admit it." "Why?" I asked, despite myself. "I couldn't look at you." He clenched his jaw. "I kept thinking about your body on the floor of the car, about the bullets and the blood." I bit my lip and held tighter to the towel. "My ears stopped ringing yesterday," I said. He smiled. "That's a good sign." "Yeah? Probably won't be any hearing damage. Might even handle it better next time." I laughed a little, but my laugh faded into nothing. "There won't be a next time," I said. His smile faded away as well. "There might be. You're with me now, Ada. There might be a next time." "Dante." He reached up and gripped my hair. The movement was sudden, fast. I didn't have time to pull back or to get away. He grabbed my hair and pulled it, and I let out a soft gasp. I clutched at my towel with my right hand and put my left one on his chest. I could feel his heart racing, and I was shocked at the intensity in his eyes. "I fucked up," he growled. "I almost got you hurt. I won't let that happen again." "Dante," I said again. "Forgive me." "There's nothing to forgive. It wasn't your fault. I was the one that wanted to get out of the house." He flinched like I'd struck him. "Don't try to take the blame, little Ada. You didn't know any better, but I did." "If you want to blame yourself, go ahead, but you won't get any pity from me." He leaned closer, his nostrils flaring. "You think I want your pity?" "I don't know what else you want from me." "I want you," he growled, tightening his grip in my hair. "I know." I said it through clenched teeth as he pulled my head back. "And you can force me into whatever you want right now if that's all you need." His grip relaxed a fraction as his lips came toward mine, but he moved past my mouth and whispered in my ear instead. "When I have you, Ada, you're going to come to me first, on your hands and knees." He released my hair. I took in a sharp breath and glared at him as he moved away. I rubbed my head with my left hand, and he paced down the hall like a pent-up tiger, all rage and muscle and power. He turned back and looked at me, arms crossed over his chest. "Vlas sent me a message this morning," he said. "Is everyone okay?" He nodded. "He wants a meeting, but there's a problem." "What is it?" "He wants you to come." I leaned back against the wall like I'd been shoved. I stared at him, and he didn't draw back or pull his gaze. I could see that he hated saying the words out loud, could see the disgust on his lips. He almost sneered at me, like he was sickened by the whole thing, and I couldn't blame him. Vlas was playing mind games, just wanted to fuck with Dante. That much was obvious. "Why?" I asked. "You know why. Says it's because you owe him a debt after what your father did, but it's really just to throw me off balance." I tilted my head to one side and pulled up my towel. "He's fucking with you." "Right." He pressed a palm against the wall and leaned toward it for a moment. "Bastard must have realized you meant something to me when his guys saw me cover you during their little ambush." "Which is a bad thing for me." He laughed. "It's a bad thing for all of us, little Ada. But yes, it's particularly bad for you." He stood up straight again and crossed his arms over his chest. "What are you going to do?" "Unfortunately, I don't have a choice in this instance. The Leone family underboss ordered me to take the meeting, which means I can't refuse." "Underboss?" I frowned a little. "Second in command. You don't need to know more than that. But suffice to say, his word is as good as the Dawn's, and so I have to obey orders." "Which means I have to obey as well." That seemed to get to him. His eyes flashed as he glared at me and shook his head slowly again. "You don't have to do anything, little Ada. I won't force you into it." "So, what am I supposed to do? Stay here alone while you go get yourself killed?" "Vlas already tried that once. He's not stupid enough to try again." "Of course he's going to try again," I protested, stepping closer. "He's going to come at you harder next time, Dante. You're injured now, and he knows it." Dante smirked at me. "I'm not so bad, and now I'll have my muscle with me at all times. Besides, I seem to recall 2 dead Russians back in the street." "Still," I shook my head and held my hands out in a placating gesture. "You can't just run off like that. You need me to come with you." He smirked and tilted his head. I stared at him and felt my towel begin to slip. I grabbed it with my left hand, blushing a little, and felt my breasts pressed together, a little slip of cleavage showing from beneath the fabric. He stepped forward again. "I don't need anything," he growled. "I don't give a fuck what Vlas wants, but I have my orders, and if you're willing to come, I won't stop you." "I'm not going to let you go alone," I said, feeling stupid but unable to help myself. I blushed as his eyes stared at my body. His eyes flashed at me. "You really want that?" he growled. "If it means ending this war and moving on with my life, yes, I really mean it." He shook his head. "I can't promise this meeting will amount to anything." "Is there a chance?" He hesitated. "There's always a chance." "Then I'll do it." I stared at him. "For you, but also for me. If this little war can end right here, I'll take the chance." He was silent for a long moment, staring at my body. I felt the hard wood beneath my feet, and I felt water drip from my soaked hair down onto the floor. The hallway seemed to contract, and light from downstairs played on the white walls in strange patterns. "Prove you can handle it," he said finally, his voice low. "How?" "Take off that towel." He moved closer again, but I didn't back away. What will that prove? That you're brave, that you're willing to do exactly what I ask of you. I don't see how that matters. He smirked. Of course you don't. But if we're going to do this, you're going to have to listen to everything I say. If I tell you to run, you need to run. If I tell you to duck, you better get down the instant the words leave my mouth. Prove that you can obey commands, Ada. Then I'll let you come with me. I clenched my jaw, bit down tight, and didn't move. He watched me, the hallway still, the only sound coming from the shower still dripping water down onto the metal drain. Slowly, I reached up to the top of the towel and unwound it. I let it fall open and drop to the floor, exposing my body to him. I stood there, my skin still damp, as goose flesh broke out all around my skin. My nipples were hard as his eyes stared at me, moving from my toes, up along my legs, lingering on my pussy before taking in my firm breasts. He finished by looking into my eyes and stepping closer again. I backed away that time and ran into the wall. But I didn't have the towel to protect me as his right hand slid up between my legs. I gasped as he bit my lower lip, bit it hard, and pushed my legs apart. I growled in surprise and pain, but his fingers slipped between my slick pussy lips, pressed apart my folds, and teased up along my slit. I gasped in pleasure, and I felt a little groan leave his lips. I thought so, he said. I thought you'd be dripping wet, little Ada, and this just proves it. What's it prove? I asked, panting hard as his fingers began to work my clit. Pleasure flooded me so hard that I felt like I might fall over. I was dizzy with it, with his touch and his smell, his hand and fingers working my pussy like I'd never felt before. That you'll obey, and that you want to. He kissed me, finally kissed me, tongue against mine, mouth tight against mine. He pushed me hard against the wall and worked my clit faster with his fingers, sliding them up inside of me, then pulling them back out. He pulled back from the kiss and spread my legs open, staring into my eyes, then dropped to his knees. I thought you said I'd be on my knees, I panted. He smirked and licked me, tongue lapping top to bottom. I grabbed his hair and moaned, my right hand lacing through his thick locks, my left cupping my breast. I couldn't help myself as I threw back my head. He sucked my clit and tongued my pussy faster, licking me, lapping me up. He grabbed my ass hard, fingers digging into my skin. He sucked me rough, then slid 2 fingers inside of me, fucking me hard with them as he looked into my eyes. Just a taste, little Ada, he whispered, then slid his fingers back out and began to suck me again. I moaned, losing myself, unable to help it. All the pent-up anger, aggression, and fear washed over me in a cascade of emotion and pleasure. I let his tongue do its work, and his incredible hands grabbed my body, cupping my ass. I teased my own nipples, tumbling head over heels in pleasure, and he didn't stop. His tongue was incredible. It was pleasure and passion. It was every inch of what I needed. I gripped his hair harder and moved my hips along his mouth, riding his tongue, the pressure building fast and hard, building so fast I could hardly believe it. His name left my lips as a strangled moan. I said it again and again, moving faster along his mouth as he licked me, sucked me, grabbed and held my ass hard against his mouth. I came like lightning, pleasure shooting through my skin, and he licked me through it all, tasting my juices, swallowing me like I was nothing. He purred like a content lion as I collapsed back against the wall, panting, eyes wide and staring. He stood and licked his fingers clean before kissing me, his tongue in my mouth. I tasted myself on his lips. "Good girl," he whispered, lingering close. He kissed my cheek and bit my lip. "Be ready to go by 5. There's a package for you downstairs, a little present." I blinked. "We're meeting him today?" He nodded. "Be ready and open your present." He turned and left without another word. He disappeared down the steps, and I slowly slumped down to the floor. I was breathing hard, gasping, choking breaths. I'd never come like that before, not even half that intensity. I hated myself and hated him, and God, all I wanted was to taste him one more time. I grabbed the towel and wrapped it around my body before managing to get back to my feet. I staggered into my room, slammed the door shut, and collapsed onto the bed.
9. Dante. My new car didn't have the same armor plating as my last one, but at least the tires weren't blown out. The old car was in the shop owned by the Leone family, and hopefully I'd get it back before the end of the week. I felt exposed without the armor plating, and if Vlas was smart, he could roll up and hit me any time. Which is why I kept my men close and stayed on the move. No more showing up at the bakery every morning to help Sergio. I still sent a couple of guys to help out and meet with local residents as my proxies, but I didn't go myself. I hoped the world could return to normal, but I suspected that might never happen. Not after something like what Vlas pulled. A hit on one of my men was one thing, but a hit on me was an entirely different play. Vlas skipped a few steps and went for the king, but he missed, and there would be hell to pay. Stephen parked out in front of the Mount Airy house. Gina was inside with Ada, but they were expecting us. "You sure this is a good idea?" Stephen asked. "She's a liability." "Maybe," I said, not looking at him. The front door opened and Ada stepped out. I lifted my head up and sat straight as she lingered on the porch for a moment. "Maybe not," Stephen said, an air of surprise in his voice. The wind picked up for a moment, blowing through Ada's thick, dark hair. She wore a dress with a low, plunging neckline, loose and gauzy. It was short, down to just above her knees, though it flowed slightly longer in the back. Her breasts looked incredible, barely covered by the thin fabric, and a diamond necklace sparkled around her throat. It was more like a choker, with little stones studded all around it. It was simple, elegant, and a symbol that she was mine, and she knew it. She began down the stairs in her heels. I was surprised that she moved so elegantly, like she had practice in them. Her makeup was perfect, a little bit of pink on her cheeks, a little bit of red on her lips, her eyes lined in black. Simple, almost understated, but it drew the outfit together. She opened the back door, climbed inside, and pulled it shut. Nobody spoke for a moment. "You look nice," I said without looking back. "It was a nice present," she answered, her voice light, like it was no big deal. "I hope it didn't cost too much." "It did," I said, "but you're worth it." I looked at Stephen and nodded. He let out a breath and began to drive. The meeting was taking place on neutral ground in Rittenhouse Square Park. It was an incredibly public place, about as public as it got. There'd be a police presence on top of the vast amounts of civilians that were always hanging around the park on a nice day. The sun was shining and it was a comfortable temperature out, so I knew there'd be a crowd. But I wasn't taking any chances. I had guys posted all over the park, and I knew Vlas would do the same thing. Stephen drove to Rittenhouse through the narrow Philly streets and found the spot that Ryan held for us. I got out and clapped the young soldier on the shoulder. He had a thin beard, dark eyes, and dark hair. He was a little out of shape, heavy in the middle, but he was a loyal guy and a good worker. "Thanks," I grunted. No problem, boss. I opened the back door and Ada swung her legs out. I glanced at Ryan and saw his eyes go wide as she stepped out. I offered her my arm and she took it, shooting me a look that I couldn't read. Ready? I asked her softly. She shook her head. Not at all. Don't worry, I said as we began to walk. Stephen and Ryan fell in behind us. The meeting's taking place in the park. So lots of witnesses. Exactly. Not the sort of place that anyone would want to do something stupid. She frowned a little bit and stumbled over an uneven piece of sidewalk. I steadied her and smiled as she looked up at me. I hope you brought more guys than just those two. I laughed. Couldn't help myself. I glanced back and Stephen rolled his eyes and Ryan looked annoyed. We brought more muscle, don't worry, I said as we walked on. She just shrugged and kept up, her hand on my arm. People threw looks at us. I was wearing an expensive bespoke suit, and Ada looked like she belonged in some French film, her clothes just as expensive, if not more so. Ryan and Stephen tagged along behind us, trying to look nonchalant, but neither of them had the talent for it. Stephen was too large to disappear into a crowd, and Ryan was too inexperienced. But it didn't matter. I liked the attention. I liked the appreciative looks from men and women alike. Women wanted to be Ada, and men wanted what I had, and I liked the idea of their jealousy. Ada was my prize, even if I could sense the tension rolling off her in waves, even if I knew she still hated me on some deep gut level, hated me just as much as she wanted me. The taste of her pussy still lingered on my lips from earlier. I'd taken her then, despite knowing I should wait, knowing I could wait for her to come to me. I couldn't help myself. Once that towel fell away, I had to taste her delicious little pussy. Thank God I was right to do it. The way she came on my tongue, her breasts shaking with every gasp of air, drove me fucking wild with lust.